vehicles which are driven not by humans, but by computers. This inquiry was presented by me, Tanya Beckett, produced by Jill Collins, researched by Matt Tolson, and the editor was Tara McDermott. The technical producer was Matthew Dempsey.
That was the inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. Nice to be back with you here behind the microphone at Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube this morning. Our morning show is on air till 8:37 a.m. and it's cold out there. Extreme cold warnings across parts of the province, and of course, a lot of the snow still out there causing issues with your drive, so it could be a little bit slick. They have done a lot of the cleanup, though, as well, as they're trying to keep up and catch up. So give us a call early if you have any issue out there. We'll let other people know how the commute is, 788-3093, and hope you're with us for the whole show. We're going to go to our news department in a second. Let's just say a quick good morning to our control room. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls. Hi, Abby. Abby's our technical producer, and we'll be on air with the weather. Good morning to Corey Funk, who's also sitting across from Abby there. Corey is the show director and covers the commute. And good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, who is hanging out behind the controls of YouTube, as he is every morning, our producer. All right, let's go to Heather now at 2 minutes to 6 o'clock and find out what is making news this Wednesday morning.
Good morning. Well, a Winnipeg nurse who killed his parents has been barred from practicing. Manitoba's College of Registered Nurses suspended the license of Trevor Farley until it finds he is no longer a danger to the public. Farley killed his parents and stabbed his former supervisor in 2021. A judge found he is not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. Today is budget day at Winnipeg City Hall. The Manitoba Library Association is concerned the clock could be ticking down on community connections, the social services center at the downtown Millennium Library. It is not clear if the city budget for next year has any funding for that program. We'll be back in our with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's actually happening today in the forecast for a moment here. So we are going to have sunshine. Winds will be a mix of sun and cloud near noon, though, and the winds will be northwest at 20. A high of minus 20 today. With wind chill, it'll feel more like minus 38. So very, very cold in the city of Winnipeg, and it's similar across southern Manitoba. Let's have a look at the show. In the first hour of the show, in a few weeks, a local musician is going to throw a holiday party. We're going to talk to Ariel Posen about his final show of the year this morning, and yes, we have tickets to give away, so you want to be tuned in. Also, with holidays around the corner, how do you teach kids about gratitude and the joy of giving instead of just getting? So we're going to hear more about that. Stay tuned.
On Q with Tom Power.
The legendary poet Nikki Giovanni has died at the age of 81. Earlier this year, Nikki sat down for a wide-ranging conversation about her life, about poetry, and why she thinks more artists need to go to Mars. You'll hear that conversation.
I think we need to get more artists into space because there are things to see.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The Bank of Canada will announce its latest interest rate policy this morning. Many economists are predicting a cut of another 50 basis points. But Canada's central bank could face risks no matter what it decides. The CBC senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong reports.
As markets, consumers, and businesses try to guess what the Bank of Canada will do next, the best bet is to listen to what the bank said the last time it cut rates.
We need to stick the landing.
That's Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem, referring to the idea of a soft landing, in which inflation comes back to normal without the economy slipping into a recession. In October, when the central bank cut its key overnight lending rate by 0.5%, Macklem said that forecast was looking good.
If the economy evolves broadly in line with this forecast, we anticipate cutting our policy rate further.
Since then, GDP has weakened further. Real GDP grew by 0% in August and just 0.1% in September. Per capita GDP has declined for 6 straight quarters. The unemployment rate has reached 6.8%, and inflation has ticked up slightly. So Randall Bartlett, Senior Director of Canadian Economics at Desjardins, says he expects the bank will cut rates, but only by 25 basis points.
And so we think there's a lot of reason for the bank to continue cutting, but to be cautious in its approach to cutting going forward.
Looming over all this is the state of the Canadian dollar. If the bank goes ahead with another big 50 basis point cut, many think the dollar could fall below 70 cents for the first time in years. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's premier want more specifics on the Prime Minister's plan for the border. If Ottawa does not stop fentanyl and illegal migrants from crossing, Donald Trump is threatening a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. As Olivia Stefanovich reports, the premiers and the Prime Minister will discuss it further in another virtual meeting today.
If we act like we're victims, then I guess he's going to treat us like we're victims.
Faced with a major threat, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says Canada should address U.S. President-elect Donald Trump head on.
The relationship between Mr. Trump and Mr. Trudeau is an important one, but I think the relationships that all of us have are going to be equally important.
The premiers are working with their American counterparts to make the case a 25% tariff on Canadian goods will drive up prices south of the border. A senior federal government source says the Prime Minister will expect an update from the provinces on their outreach. And the premiers, well, they want to hear what Ottawa is doing too.
They said they were going to come back with a plan.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he expects more details from the federal government, so tensions don't escalate into a trade war with the U.S.
It's not worth it. We're so much stronger together. That last country the president should be worrying about is his closest ally and friend, Canada.
Some premiers left their last meeting with the Prime Minister disappointed. Ottawa didn't present a plan to strengthen border security, a key Trump demand. Sources say the federal government is considering spending more than $1 billion at the border. An announcement is expected before Trump's inauguration in the new year. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
In Syria, everyone there knows the uncertainty. A new prime minister has been appointed by rebel forces. The Assad regime has fallen, and Syrians have been looking towards a new future. The CBC senior international correspondent Margaret Evans joins me now from Damascus. And Margaret, what is the new prime minister saying?
Well, he's started out by pledging inclusivity. He's saying now is a time for stability. It is a time for calm. And actually, one of the first things he's done is had a meeting, not only with members of what they're calling the Transitional Council, but with former cabinet ministers from the al-Assad regime. So they're trying to present an image of a calm transfer of power, if you like, to be and present a reassuring image to the outside world. One of the other things he has done is called on Syrian refugees living abroad to come home. That's more than 6 million people. The vast majority of them, of course, are in regional countries like Turkey and Jordan and Egypt. But he's saying it's now time for Syrians to come home and rebuild. So trying to deliver the right messages to the outside world and to Syrians who might be nervous about what comes next.
There is still fighting happening in Syria. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. Some of the Syrian opposition groups who are backed by Turkey up in the northeast of the country have been fighting the Syrian Kurds, who are also in the northeast of the country. They are backed by the United States, the fighting force that helped defeat the Islamic State. Turkey says that those Kurdish groups has within its ranks some people supporting Kurdish separatists in Turkey, and there's been a lot of fighting up north, and that's worrying people quite a bit.
And what is life like right now in Damascus?
You know, it's interesting because it's really coming back to life. Actually, this morning I was in the famous covered market, the old souk. Shops were opening again. Shopkeepers were saying that they felt confident enough to open. They're willing to give this process a chance because they're so happy to see the back of Bashar al-Assad, a truly barbaric regime that, you know, has been in charge here for more than 20 years.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thanks for having me.
The CBC's Margaret Evans in Damascus. Giant flower displays are laid outside the presidential compound in Seoul. Truckloads are pulling up just hours after police raided the office of Yoon Suk-yeol. The South Korean president is under criminal investigation for insurrection, but he has not yet been arrested for his attempt to impose martial law on the country. Last week, Yoon has apologized for the move that he says was aimed at anti-government actors. China is condemning Canada for its latest round of sanctions. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly announced them on Monday. They target 8 former and current senior officials involved in human rights violations.
This
morning, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning accused the Canadian government of disregarding the facts and using the banner of human rights to slander China. She called the sanctions a serious violation of international law. There are reports that China has arbitrarily detained more than 1 million people, many of them Uyghur Muslims, since 2017. Many were allegedly held in camps and faced psychological, physical, and sexual violence. TikTok is challenging the federal government's order to shut down its operations in Canada. Documents filed in court in Vancouver claim the order will eliminate hundreds of jobs and could potentially terminate 250,000 contracts TikTok has with Canadian advertising clients. Ottawa ordered the dissolution of TikTok's Canadian business in November. It cited national security concerns. While the offices are closed, the app is still accessible. A class action lawsuit over contaminated water has been filed against Transport Canada. Residents in a Newfoundland and Labrador town say their drinking water contains forever chemicals. They say those chemicals seeped into their wells from the nearby St. John's Airport. The CBC's Heather Gillis has the details.
For Eddie Shear and his family, simply turning on the taps in their home is a little terrifying these days. His well water in Torbay, Newfoundland and Labrador has tested positive for toxic forever chemicals, per and polyfluoroalkylated substances, 3 times the recommended safe level.
They can lead to thyroid issues, immunodeficiency issues, prostate cancer, kidney cancer, liver cancer.
The chemicals seeped into the groundwater, migrated into wells from foam used in firefighting training between 1980 and 2004 at the St. John's International Airport. In January, Transport Canada tested more than 50 wells. In May, it started providing bottled water to those affected, but it's not a long-term fix. So Shear started a class action lawsuit, saying the federal government failed to properly clean up the land, decreasing the value of homes nearby, causing a lot of stress, and well contamination for dozens of homes.
We need to be hooked up to a water supply, a clean water supply.
Hard to do, says Alex Templeton, the lawyer leading the lawsuit. Municipal water hookup isn't viable. Nearby ponds are contaminated too. Templeton says any solution will cost a lot of money and time.
So class actions are measured in years, not months or weeks.
Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Transport Canada says they're aware of the lawsuit, but won't comment while it's before the courts. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good cold morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Great to be back with you behind the microphone of Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Cold spot, Thompson, minus 33 right now, and here in southern Manitoba, especially in the west, we actually have a bit of a warning for the cold, so be careful today. This hour on the program, we're going to talk to Ariel Posen, who has his final show of the year coming up. We have tickets to give away. It's a fun holiday show, so stay tuned for that. Also, we're going to hear from a parenting expert about how to teach the kids about giving and gratitude rather than just getting. And so that's coming up in a bit of an annual conversation, resetting the family. And then at 10 to 7 this morning, some of the challenges facing small businesses this holiday season. We're going to hear from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business about the impact of the Canada Post strike and the federal government's GST break, which is something that some local businesses in Manitoba have already been weighing in on. So we'll hear a bit of their concerns about that challenge as well. So that's all still ahead in a busy first hour. Right now, though, let's go to Heather Wells, who's here with our news headlines.
Good morning. Well, a former star prosecutor who sent at least 7 innocent men to jail has died. George Dangerfield's former lawyer says he died in Winnipeg last year. Dangerfield worked on several high-profile cases, but some of the people he put behind bars have been found innocent in the decades after he retired. The first draft of Winnipeg's budget comes out today. It is the city's spending blueprint for 2025, and the Manitoba Library Association worries there won't be any funding for Community Connections, the social services center at the downtown Millennium Library. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
What the heck? I left for 4 days.
What happened here?
Taxes are going up. There's tons of snow outside.
And it's really cold.
But my favorite people live in Winnipeg, so here I am. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Nice to be back home always. One of my favorite people, there he is, Mr. Abiy Adeyemi, and his warm hat on, which is appropriate for what he's about to tell us.
Yeah, it's. I'll just say, in summary, it's going to be dangerously cold outside today. Everywhere, frostbite is a concern. We have extreme cold warnings for eastern Manitoba, including Brandon and the Parkland region. We will be seeing wind chills in the range of -40s and creating a dangerous condition. So you may want to take care outside. Currently, Winnipeg -25, clear. Today's forecast, we will see sunny skies. That will start the day. Some clouds will move in by noon. It will remain very cold. We'll see a high of around -20 with the wind chill factored in. They are kind of extreme this morning. We're going to be in the range of -38. Breezy conditions, it will be brisk, and you might want to take care because there's a risk of frostbite on exposed skin. Just take care outside. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at -25.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Nice specs, by the way. I love those glasses. Lots have changed here. Corey, you kind of look the same.
Yeah, I kind of tired. Maybe a little bit of baby spit up on my sweater that I realized I just threw on this morning. And yeah.
Hey, listen, later we're going to have a commuter on that talks about, not having a car in the cold and what it's like to actively commute in this. What was it like out there this morning?
Yeah, ran in this morning. It was fine until I started running north. Then my face started to hurt a little bit. But otherwise, clear sidewalks, actually not looking too bad. Actually pretty grippy overall. But if you are in the car so far, haven't heard of any major issues. Highway's looking okay. Highway 10 through Riding Mountain is being reported as covered on Manitoba 501, so might be poor conditions there, as well as the highways around the Paw, not looking so great either. So if you see anything else though going on out there, you want to give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
I love that active shot that Kevin's got up on our YouTube channel of the drive. It's like the windshield you can see, right, with a GoPro, and you can see the edges of the scraping. We all wish we could scrape the windshield perfectly, but there's just too much frost. All right, let's get into a bit of a music that's going to warm our heart in a moment here, because there's a show coming up. From Jakarta to Liverpool, Ariel Posen has been everywhere this year. It was only natural, he says, that then he would end what's been a year full of touring in his hometown here in Winnipeg. So on December 19th, Ariel is going to perform his last show of the year. It's called the Hometown Holiday Party, and he's up early to tell us all about it. Hey there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. So what are you doing at the show?
Well, simply put, we're just playing music, doing our thing, playing a show, but it just felt right after a couple essentially very busy years with not a lot of Winnipeg action going on. We wanted to bring the show that we've, just been working on and playing and I guess building up and do it one last time before we, do new music and start a new chapter, do it one more time at home with all our friends and all the familiar faces. Yeah.
When's the last time you had a hometown show?
Well, the last time we played in Winnipeg as an actual headline show was when my last record, Reasons Why, came out, which was in September. So we played actually at the Park Theatre September 23. So about 14 months ago, 15 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're at an intimate venue as well. That might match what you're talking about, wanting this to be sort of a hometown show, as it's called, side stage. What's your preference, given that you've been all over the world playing some bigger rooms and stuff?
Oh, I mean, everyone likes to play a bigger room, but there's an intimacy and a special vibe that comes from a smaller room. And everyone always asks me, what's the best what's your dream venue, or what's the best this or that? And it's really about who shows up. It's about the people that are there. So you could get a pretty amazing atmosphere in a small place, but you can get the same thing in a big one. So, for this show and this concept and this party idea, I thought it felt more unique and special and intimate to do it in a smaller room and make it feel a touch more exclusive, so to speak. And with a new venue like Side Stage, wanted to support these guys and do the thing.
Tell me, Ariel, when you were touring around Europe with this year, and you've been really busy this year, as you said. Tell me, one of your best memories, either on or off stage, that stay with you from the trip. When you're coming home and you're telling people, "Oh, this happened."
Oh man, these questions are really tough because the thing about going on tour, for those that don't get to go on tour, it sounds pretty amazing, and it is. To go to the Netherlands, Scandinavia, Germany, Ireland, stuff like that. But we travel, we wake up, we play a show, and we rinse and repeat.
Yep.
I think the most special memory I can think of is that I spent a very small amount of time a long time ago living in Cork, Ireland, and it's the second biggest city in Ireland, but it's still very small. Like it's close to the size of Brandon. And when I lived there, it's not a hot spot that people are going to come visit to. If anyone's going to go see Ireland, they'll go to Dublin or something like that. So we actually played in Cork with my band, who are all Winnipeg guys, and I got to show them around and show them where I lived and all that stuff. So that was actually a very special moment.
Yeah, no doubt. We're going to play your song "Heart by Heart" in just a moment here. So I'm if I talk to you less, it's because I want to play more music. But what can you tell us about the tune?
It's a song off my second record, Headway, and probably one of my more popular songs on DSP, streaming, all that kind of stuff. And it's just a song about getting someone to open up to you, but not forcing it, and just letting them know that you're there for them and you want to be supportive. And I thought it'd just be a good one to if you're driving to work, tap your hands on the steering wheel too, and enjoy. Yeah.
Well, people will certainly enjoy. Thanks for being our first guest of the Wednesday morning show, and looking forward to that holiday show. I know we've got some tickets to give away, so thanks for being up early and telling us a bit about it.
My pleasure. Nice to chat with you. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
You too.
That's Ariel Posen. He's going to play Side Stage here in Winnipeg with that Hometown Holiday Show. It is December 19th, the date of the show. If you want to win tickets, and Corey and I wrestled over this, but we landed on the first person to email us. So if you're up early this cold morning, you're going to go to the show if you're up, and you email win@cbc.ca, and you can put Ariel Posen Show in the subject line. Meantime, here's Heart by Heart on CBC.
Hate to see you cry. You're burning, and it feels just like you're keeping the wolves at the door. Oh, you've got no way out. Are you empty? Oh, you can see the writing on the wall. When you find me, baby, you can keep me in the dark. When you find me, you don't have to show me who you are until I know you're all by heart. Oh, you, stronger than you think you are, and we don't have to be so far apart. When you find me, baby, you can keep me in the dark. When you find me, you don't have to show me who you are until I know your heart by heart. Heart by heart. Till I know your heart by heart. Oh, you don't need to fall into me, but you know I'll be ready if you need a place to land. When you find me, baby, you can keep me in the dark. When you find me, you don't have to show me who you are. When you find me, baby, you can keep me in the dark. When you find me, you don't have to show me who you are till I know you're all by heart. Heart by heart. Till I know you're heart by heart. Heart by heart.
Well, we promised you a good tune that you could tap your fingers in the steering wheel to, and that fits the bill for sure. Ariel Posen and Heart by Heart. The Home for the Holidays show, Hometown Holidays show rather, is coming up on December 19th. And enjoy it if you're going. It is happening at I always get the name of the venue wrong. I'm sorry, it's new. So I'm going to get it correct here. It is Side Stage. I always want to say Side Show. It's Side Stage here in Winnipeg, December 19th. You know who's going on us? The person who emailed first for tickets. Oh, it was Joshua. Joshua was quickest to email win@cbc.ca. So Corey will connect with you, Joshua, and get you those tickets. You have one pair to go to the show and enjoy it. It is 6:24 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 9:90 a.m. on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Wednesday morning, clear, cold out there, -25. Bundle up, everybody, everywhere you are in Manitoba this morning. Looks like they got some good clearing done, though, and that will continue, though, of course, today all over the city and on parts of the highways. So just be careful for that snow clearing equipment and take it easy when you're out there, because it will be, of course, icy. We're now into full winter. So 788-3093 if you need to call us with anything on the commute. Well, Christmas is really coming up fast now. It's 2 weeks away, and an inevitable focus of the holidays, especially for kids, is getting gifts. But how can they be influenced to get beyond ripping off the wrapping paper and shift their thinking toward giving? To talk about it, Louise Gleason's here, freelance journalist who writes about parenting issues and is also a registered psychotherapist. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So does every kid start with wanting stuff, that mine, before they turn to what if I gave it to you?
I don't think we come out that way. I think this is something that we kind of begin to absorb from our environment. And of course, like you said, we're 2-week countdown is coming down the line now. So they're being bombarded with messaging and consumerism. And of course, there's lots of chatter in the classroom about the upcoming holidays. So while I don't think they come that way, I definitely think it can happen.
And at what age, in your view, do kids start to really understand the concept of giving, or does that also depend on the kid?
Actually, I think most people are surprised to hear that it starts right from infancy. Babies really notice how their caregivers around them are engaging in acts of generosity and giving with others, with the child themselves. As they get a bit older and they develop language and they're really starting to pay attention and get curious, That's where the emotional and social aspects of understanding giving and getting begin to really center around maybe more tangible items. Also, they're still enjoying attention and time, of course. And then as they get even older still, and we're kind of putting them out into the world, we really have an opportunity as caregivers and parents to broaden their understanding of what generosity and giving can look like for them, whether it's volunteerism or a thoughtful gift for a friend or a sibling.
What does the first conversation look like?
With our kids around giving, I think we're modeling it, right? So for me, with my kids, it was bringing them along. So as I'm out there kind of around this time of year where we're thinking about gift giving, I'm having conversations with them. I'm talking to them about how good it feels to think about someone else. I'm talking to them about how I make decisions about what I want to give someone, whether it's my time or a tiny gift or an act of service. And they pay attention. They're really watching us.
It seems like an opportunity, of course, also to weave in some discussions about money, kid-friendly, money, budgeting lessons. Is that something you also suggest, to do?
Yeah, I mean, we always want to look for opportunities to talk about budget and money in very age-appropriate ways with our children. And of course, the holiday season, again, is a perfect opportunity to do that. There's conversations that can be had around how years look different from year to year for families as far as budget goes. Honesty is great, and then helping your child kind of work with their own budget. So let's say they're wanting to buy a gift for a friend. Well, what's reasonable for you? What can you manage? This is where we're really reinforcing what would be thoughtful. It's not really about monetary, but it is a chance to kind of weave in, talk about budget.
And overall, when you look at why we would talk about this, I mean, this seems like an obvious question, but why is it important to foster an appreciation for giving instead of just getting?
I think when we give children an opportunity to kind of practice this, it's such a great impact on self-esteem and confidence and their understanding that they do have value to add. Children really need kind of three pillars from parents and caregivers and role models, which is, autonomy, competence, and a connection that's feeling very social. Gift giving or thoughtfulness or generosity at this time of year is a great way to really put some of that into practice for your child. And we know that the long-term impact of instilling those pillars in our children are just absolutely wonderful.
And should you help them with what to pick, or is that an area where autonomy becomes very important?
We're going in with our budget, so they know exactly what their limitations are, and we're having those conversations. What color is your friend into this year? What are they really noticing about their friend? Are they into butterflies? And of course, you're going to have to give some guidance depending on the child around, what can we afford with the budget that we're coming in. That also speaks to what your friend or your sibling or your grandparent is really into. And so, of course, it is a collaborative effort.
All right, Louise, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Louise Gleason, freelance journalist who writes about parenting issues and a registered psychotherapist. We're coming up to 6:30 now. It's mainly clear in the city of Winnipeg and cold. If you need us on the commute, 788-3093. We have business news. It's going to be coming up with Crystalie Ramlakan. And today we're going to be getting some more analysis, of course, of the opening day's markets, but also we're going to talk about the airline industry. It appears it's finally making a comeback after the pandemic, so we're going to hear more about the data there. In addition to that, TikTok, as you may have heard on World Report this morning, is challenging the federal government's order to shut down its operations in Canada. So we will get some more details from Crystalie Ramlakan right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, get set to feel some Arctic air. It is minus 24 in downtown Winnipeg. At the airport, though, minus 28. The wind chill at the airport feels like minus 41 this morning. There is an extreme cold warning for western Manitoba, talking about those wind chill values being close to minus 40 through the day. In Winnipeg, a high this afternoon of minus 20. The owners of some Manitoba restaurants say they have been getting an extra helping of crime. They're asking the province for help dealing with a spike in theft and vandalism. Sapoj Najpal owns India Palace on Ellis. She says she has seen an increase in crime around her restaurant, but she says she's not alone.
Everywhere, any province you go, we just heard about the Alberta, we just, things happening in everywhere in Canada and the worldwide.
Sean Jeffrey, head of the Provincial Restaurant Association, met yesterday with Justice Minister Matt Wiebe to discuss the issue. He tells CBC the Justice Minister was very open to addressing some of the challenges facing the industry. The first draft of Winnipeg's budget comes out today. It is the city's spending blueprint for 2025. The Manitoba Library Association is concerned there won't be any funding for Community Connections. That is the social services centre at downtown Winnipeg's Millennium Library. Kirsten Werman coordinates the Library Association's programs.
This innovative, effective space is also one of the busiest spaces in Millennium. This space does the work it's supposed to do.
Funding for Community Connections expires December 31st. It is not clear if the 2025 city budget will allow the centre to continue. That budget will be released this afternoon. A Winnipeg nurse who killed his parents has been barred from practicing. Manitoba's College of Registered Nurses suspended the license of Trevor Farley until it finds he is no longer a danger to the public. Farley killed his parents and stabbed his former supervisor in 2021. A judge found he is not criminally responsible due to a mental health disorder. Farley said in a hearing he isn't guilty of professional misconduct, but admitted his mental illness may put people in danger. He was declared a high-risk accused, and he can only be discharged from hospital with the approval of a Superior Court judge. A Crown prosecutor who had his record tarnished by multiple wrongful convictions has died. George Dangerfield's former lawyer, Jay Prober, says he died in Winnipeg last year. Dangerfield helped put 7 innocent men in jail in a career that spanned decades. Prober says Dangerfield doesn't deserve taking all the blame.
He happened to be a very good lawyer. And to lay these wrongful convictions at his doorstep, each one of them is unfair based on what I know and knew at the time.
Many of the cases involved the prosecution failing to disclose key evidence. Prober says Dangerfield only worked with the information he got from police. Canada's premiers will meet again today with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. They will gather virtually to discuss how to avoid Donald Trump's threat of harsh tariffs. Doug Ford is Premier of Ontario.
They said they were going to come back with a plan, put together a proposal, number one, to strengthen our borders and hopefully meet our 2% NATO commitment, and to come up with a plan for negotiations with the U.S. on the trade.
The U.S. president-elect says he will impose a 25% tariff on all goods from Canada and Mexico unless both countries stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants across their borders. Some mortgage holders are crossing their fingers this morning. Canada's central bank will announce its latest interest rate policy. The Bank of Canada is expected to cut its key rate by 0.5%. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A blowout at Canada Life Centre.
Cross-ice speed, and Shifley scores!
Mark Shifley in the second period on TSN with his second goal of the night. The Jets hammering the Boston Bruins 8-1 in front of the hometown crowd. And the third period got a little heated. David Gustafson and Logan Stanley both dropping their gloves in separate fights. Then Jets captain Adam Lowry taking on the Bruins' Nikita Zadorov. He says he did it even though his line mates tried to wave him off.
You just want to go out there and, let your teammates know you got their back. So, that was my thinking. I had my line mates trying to tell me no, but, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
The Jets and Bruins combined for 66 penalty minutes. Coach Scott Arniel says his team was sticking up for each other. Winnipeg next hosts Las Vegas in a game tomorrow night. You can find more on last night's game as well as other news as it's updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks, Heather Walls. Let's get into what's going on now in our regional forecast. Abby is here to talk about the cold day ahead. Hello.
Cold day ahead for sure. Frostbite is in play today. That's the big concern. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at -24. It's clear outside. We're going to see a sunny day, then a transition to a mix of sun and cloud. It will be very chilly this morning. We're going to see a high of -20 with some breezy conditions. Though the wind chill are kind of on the extreme side, it's going to feel like -38 this morning. And frostbite, as mentioned, remains high. So, prepare accordingly. Similar condition in the South Central region and the Red River Valley. For Western Manitoba in Brandon, it is currently -29. Today we'll also see sunny conditions, but a cold high of -24 is expected. And with the wind chill factored in, it's going to be feeling around -43 this morning. And extreme cold warnings are in effect for that Westman region, including Brandon, as temperatures will be dropping to around -30 overnight. Frostbite is also a risk, and you need to take care. In the Parkland region, Dauphin is sitting at -31 at this time. We're looking at a sunny day ahead. It will feel much colder with the wind chills of in the valley of -44 this morning. We do have an extreme cold warning also for folks in the Parkland region. For the Interlake region, it is cold this morning at -27. Expect a sunny start, then we'll see a mix of sun and cloud by the noon period. The high will be around -21, but the wind chill is going to make it feel like -37 as you start your day. There's also risk of frostbite and exposed skin. In the Pamphlet Flum, we're looking at temperatures around -30. Sunny conditions you see becoming a mix of sun and cloud by the noon period. High around -23, and the wind chill will make it feel close to -40. You'll be around -38. Frostbite in play also. Now for Thompson and Churchill, we're looking at temperatures hovering between -33 and -22 at this time. Thompson at -33, aiming for a high of -23. The wind chill is going to make it feel like -22, -42 this morning, so be cautious of frostbite. And in Churchill, temperatures at -20 at this time, with the wind chill making it feel around -37. Overall, Marcy, across the province, we're going to see this like crazy, dangerous wind chill. So I just say people prepare as you step out for the day. And if you're making transition from one bus to another, be prepared for that also.
Yeah, for sure. If your bus is late, you're going to be cold standing there. All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, what do we know about the actual commute?
So far, actually, commute seems to be pretty straightforward. Haven't heard of any major issues. Sidewalks were plowed on my run-in this morning, and it seems like the same thing for the bike lanes. Highways looking actually pretty plowed as well, so I haven't heard of anything yet. I will note, though, Portage and Maine, if you drive through there, the barricades are starting to come down.
Oh!
They're chipping away at those things. They're coming. It's weird, like as a millennial who's that's all I've known. It's like they're coming down.
Well, I'm Gen X. It's all I've known too.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
So yeah, this is for the for most of a lot of people in Winnipeg.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll ever like sell like a piece of the barricade.
I was wondering if they were smart, they should have.
I know. I couldn't. It needs more revenue.
Listen, when the Berlin Wall came down, I had family that was there, and they bought the souvenir, like they sold for souvenirs.
Yeah.
Pieces of the Berlin Wall.
Yep.
They could have done that for Portage, Maine. I would have bought one.
Yeah, I'm sure I'd pay like $5.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, would you take a whole barricade and make it part of your basement, and integrate it into your design? Maybe not.
Maybe.
But a piece of
Set it up on your lawn. Yeah,
right?
I don't know. Anyways,
Kids, don't go over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Go underground. Dig a tunnel.
It's going to take 20 minutes for you to get
Zero mileage.
10 meters that way. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
People might miss that today, actually, because it's cold out there. So as Abby said, bundle up. It's time for business news. Crystal Ramlakan joins us now via Zoom. Hello to you.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So from the underground to the air, the airline industry, it seems, is making a comeback after the pandemic. It's taken some time, but what can you tell us?
Yeah, so the global airline industry will likely rake in more than $1 trillion in revenue next year. And that's according to the International Air Transport Association, which says passenger numbers are set to hit an all-time high of 5 billion. So the association also predicts the average profit per passenger will increase. And these figures represent a comeback for an industry that recorded 3 years of losses between 2020 and 2022, amounting to almost $187 billion. So sustained demand for travel has restored the industry's profits and has even allowed some carriers to charge higher prices. Now, the head of the group says the huge revenue numbers are great news, but predicts the net profitability across the industry will still be wafer thin, though, and says that will not be helped by delays in aircraft deliveries by plane makers such as Airbus and Boeing. And, a chronic shortage of planes means that older, less fuel-efficient aircraft are being flown for much longer, increasing operating and maintenance costs and negatively affecting the environment. Global conflicts are also driving costs higher because of the big stretches of airspace closed to commercial flights. So the closures force airlines to take longer routes.
It's funny, hey, there's something about like people would want to be green in a lot of ways, but would you really want to get in a plane and have them say, by the way, this is an old plane, we've just put it back in commission? Like, you want a lot of guarantees. You have actually 2 stories that are in World Report this morning, but you have more details for us. So let's start with the TikTok one. TikTok challenging the federal government's order to shut down its operations in Canada. What do you know about that?
Yeah, so the company claims a shutdown would eliminate hundreds of jobs and could terminate 250,000 contracts it has with Canadian advertising clients. So TikTok wants the court to pause the order while it argues for the decision to be overturned. Now, the government ordered TikTok to close its Canadian business in November after a national security review of the Chinese company behind the social media platform. But the app will continue to be available to Canadians. Now, this review was carried out through the Investment Canada Act, which allows the government to investigate any foreign investment with the potential to harm national security. And at the time, the industry minister said the government was taking action to address specific national security risks. But he didn't specify what those risks were. Now, U.S. lawmakers have said they're worried that China could use national security laws to access personal information of users. But TikTok has said the Chinese government has never asked for data and it would refuse any such request. And, back here in Canada, TikTok says it provides hundreds of well-paying jobs and contributes millions of dollars annually to the Canadian economy.
And finally, a judge has blocked the Onion's purchase of Alex Jones' InfoWars. What else do we know about this?
Yeah, so a bankruptcy judge says he has concerns with the auction process, which he says left money on the table. So the judge says the process was well intended, but did not maximize value. So last month, the satirical news site won an auction to acquire the parent company of InfoWars, which was sold off as part of a defamation settlement after Jones falsely called the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre a hoax. So that bid was backed by the families of 8 victims of the school shooting and 1 first responder. The Onion offered $1.75 million in cash along with a credit from the families who offered to forego 100% of their portion of the winning bid, so valuing the bid at $7 million. Now, the only other bid was a $3.5 million bid in cash from First United American Companies, which is actually affiliated with Jones and operates his online supplement store. So the court-appointed trustee changed the live auction to sealed bids, which the judge says left money on the table because other bidders did not know about the competing bids. Now, Jones was previously ordered to pay nearly $1.5 billion to families of the Sandy Hook shooting victims, but he has dragged his feet on paying that. And so everything from the platform's studio equipment to its social media accounts have been up for sale to the highest bidder.
Quick markets, Crystal, what do we know?
In Europe, markets are mixed. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is up. In Asia, markets are mixed as well. Japan is up, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is down. Oil is up 93 cents to $69.52 US per barrel. Gold is up $1.70 to $2,695.50 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.05 of a cent to 70.5 cents US.
All right, Crystal Ramlakan, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
We will talk to Crystal Lee again for Business News tomorrow. She's on the show every day. 6:45 a.m. the time. Mainly clear, minus 25 in Winnipeg. Cold, cold, cold. Well, next on the show, imagine discovering voices from the past hidden away for decades. That is what happened when 60 hours worth of audio recordings were handed over to the First Nations University of Canada in Regina. Now, these were stories from elders that were recorded in the 1970s on Daystar, Gordon, and Kawakatus First Nations. Tucked away in archives for years, they're now finding new life as a team works to translate them. CBC Saskatchewan spoke with some of the people involved in this special project.
My name is Bill Strongarm. I'm from Kawakatus First Nation. In the 50s and 60s in Kawakatus primarily, our First Nation all spoke the Cree and Saulteaux languages, so it was at that time that they wanted to record the elders, and I remember through my uncle was also a former senator of FDN, was involved with the whole project through with my other uncle Lawrence Tobacco, who came on behalf of West Saskatchewan Union Cultural College to report the elders on the stories.
On a log, and his tooth got stuck in there.
Okay.
And then Nina Puss was told. My name is Caroline Corman. I'm from the Kawakatus First Nation. What we're doing today is translating stories that was recorded in the 1960s to 70s by my late father. We're translating them into English. They were recorded, but I never knew that they were in the archives, so it's kind of I was shocked actually when I found out that they were up in the archives in Calgary. And this young... And this young... Well, that's Moose. That's Moose. I walked into the building here and they were playing the tapes, and I just stopped and I said, "That's my dad." I blurted out, "That's my dad," and everybody kind of looked at me, and then, they were surprised that I recognized his voice. And we used to always have the elders come to our place, and that's where he done the recordings. My dad always instilled in us the importance of our history and the importance of our language, which was really important. And he taught us that in order for me to know my true identity, because, that's where all our identity comes from, is our language. So if we lose our language, then we lose everything. We don't know who we are and what tribe we're from and where we existed from. So it's really important. So that's what he always told us. It's a little small.
I think Cree language is a very unique language. It was given us by the Creator, and it has a spiritual connection, a spiritual meaning when you speak it. We're kind of slowly forgetting that, because at the university they teach out already. They don't teach you the extent of how that word means. If you dissect a word like awasis, meaning child, to us awasis means a board light. You dissect that word awa, the front part refers to the root word awahin. Board, this means a light. It's a board light. And to us, the child is bored here when they're here on life. We're here to care for them. We're here to nurture them. We're here to assist them to grow. So the whole process encompasses that belief around a child. So that's why it's so sacred. Every word in a language in Cree and Saulteaux has a spiritual and special connection to the universe or the environment, and to our way of life.
The young kids are really, really interested what they've lost. Lots of them do not know what a giveaway dance is, or what a rain dance is, or or what a horse dance is. Those things, or a ghost dance, those kind of things. They don't know, they're lost, and that's what they want to regain. A lot of our young people want to know. My hope is that one day that we can retain our language, because that's who we are. That's where our identity comes from, and it's a bond. My dad would feel very, he'd be telling me, "Oh, I'm so proud of you, my girl." Like he'd tell me in Cree, And his hope was for this to stay alive in our community, that it would carry on.
Hey, I got that.
Bill Strongarm and Caroline Poorman are helping translate hours of Cree recordings that were recorded from the 1970s. They're working with the First Nations University of Canada in Regina. Amazing. 9 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Well, we're 2 weeks out from Christmas. A lot of people thinking about shopping locally and buying from small businesses. But with the Canada Post strike hampering deliveries, it is getting difficult. And that's not the only challenge this year for small Canadian retailers. The GST holiday starts on the 14th. It has small business owners like Peter Fair scrambling to prepare. He's the owner of Gourmet Inspirations and a co-founder of Love Local Manitoba, which sells locally produced foods in St. Vital Mall.
As a business owner, it has created quite a headache, and to have to sift through 600 products and to now figure out which ones are GST exempt and which ones are not, and to have to figure that out has become a big job, and we did not get a lot of notice on this, and so we're scrambling to get it all done and make it active for Saturday to go live. The platform I use, it lumps GST and PST as a tax as a whole, so now it's going through all those products and separating out the PST and GST and recategorizing products and creating new filters and categories and doing tax overrides in the back end, and so it becomes a big job. We're going to pull some late nights here and get her done.
Dan Kelly is the president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business and here to respond and look at this across Canada. Hi there.
Good morning.
So how many of your members are going through what Peter Fair just described in his business in Manitoba?
Oh, Peter's not alone. Goodness, for any retailer that sells any of the targeted goods, this is a nightmare. At their busiest possible season with 2 weeks' notice, businesses are having to reprogram their computer machines. They have to, computer and point-of-sale machines, they have to do that all Friday night. They can't do it before because they have to continue to charge the tax until then. And, as he was saying, have to go through a list of sometimes thousands of products in order to hand select which ones the GST exemption will apply to and which ones it won't. If they get that wrong, they're likely to be audited by the Canada Revenue Agency in March or April and get a giant bill.
In terms of the tax break and looking at it from the perspective that on the positive, it could potentially make people spend more, what are your thoughts on that and what are you hearing from businesses?
Yeah, look, small businesses are happy for their customers to save some money. Tax reductions are generally a good thing. But Ottawa has found the most confusing possible way to try to make this happen. And, of course, it's all temporary. So, businesses, only 4% of them told us that they think that they will make more net sales as a result of the GST holiday. 2/3 of them have said that they expect that the sales will just be shifted from one period of the year to another. And that's what the research shows, is that tax holidays, if they're temporary, they just really lump the sales into one period of time instead of spreading it out over a bigger period. And that's already concentrated over the holiday seasons because so many retail sales happen in the 6 weeks leading up to Christmas.
Let's switch gears here to the Canada Post strike. How is that impacting members?
It is a big deal. Look, a lot of consumers, I'm sure your listeners would agree, they're less dependent on the post than ever before. But for small business, shipping through Canada Post is still very important. It's one of the only low-cost ways of getting goods to final consumers. Businesses use it to send money to each other, especially business-to-business transactions. If you're paying somebody $20,000, it's typically through a business check sent in the mail. And third, businesses use Canada Post for marketing. They use it to send ad mail, postcards often, or flyers. All of those options have been taken out for the holiday season. And it's made worse now by the fact that private couriers have reached maximum capacity. And so there's no give left in the system. So even those more expensive options available to small firms in the weeks leading up to this are effectively now frozen as these couriers are not taking new shipments.
I know there was a time when local businesses, smaller businesses, didn't have an online presence. What does that look like?
So many small businesses, especially during the pandemic, hustled to invest in e-commerce. And there are new businesses that are popping up every day where the model is selling exclusively through e-commerce And with Canada Post taken out, that's really put these companies behind the eight ball. I spoke to a business owner that sells through children's clothes through e-commerce and is dealing with the double hit of the lack of Canada Post and other couriers, and struggling to figure out how she's going to implement the GST changes all at the same time. So this is a mess. I've talked to a lot of business owners who are in tears trying to figure out how they are going to serve their customers and try to make sales given the postal strike and the courier disruptions.
What do you want shoppers to consider this holiday season?
Well, look, anything that they can do to support their local independent businesses is a good thing. And perhaps if you're not able to get your goods before Christmas through e-commerce, this may be the year that you return in store to the local shops and in your neighborhood to make a sale there. Secondly, just be patient with businesses on this weekend as the GST holiday goes into effect. Businesses have had 2 weeks to try to pull all of this together. They're going to make mistakes. Your interpretation of what should be GST exempt may be different than the rules. And please don't try to return the things you've already bought to repurchase them on Saturday in order to take the HST or GST off of that sale. That costs small business a fortune. And this is such a critical period for them that I'm really hoping consumers are patient, understanding with the local businesses with whom they deal every day.
Dan, thank you for the conversation. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
It's Dan Kelly, president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. By the way, we played that clip from Peter Fair talking about how Manitoba businesses have been impacted in his personal lens as well. You can find that on Up to Speed's page where they carry the interviews. So the CBC Listen app is what I'm trying to say here, is where you can find that interview. It was in conversation with Faith this week. He was, rather. Let's get to what's going on in the news this morning, Wednesday morning. It is December 11th, and Heather Wells is here with our headlines.
And today is Budget Day at Winnipeg City Hall. The Manitoba Library Association is concerned the clock could be ticking down on Community Connections, the social services center at the downtown Millennium Library. It is not clear if this city budget has any funding for Community Connections, so we'll hear more on that. As well, a Winnipeg nurse who killed his parents has been barred from practicing. Manitoba's College of Registered Nurses suspended the license of Trevor Farley until it finds out he is no longer a danger to the public. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In the commute this morning, call us if you need us, 788-3093. Check the highways before you head out. Watch for slippery conditions, all of that, and equipment as well, cleaning and clearing. It's cold. Western Manitoba is the area that has the extreme cold warning. Brandon, Killarney, Verdon, Dauphin, all through Minnedosa. It could feel like minus 40 with wind chills. In Winnipeg, not much better. Sunny today, a high of minus 20, so that's better. But with wind chill this morning, at least, it'll feel like minus 38. Coming up in the next hour, there's a new exhibit at the Manitoba Museum. It takes an in-depth look at one of the most enigmatic creatures to roam our province, so we'll tell you that wild story. Plus, with it being a winter wonderland out there, some might say it's best enjoyed from the comfort of a warm car. But what about the active commuting in the winter? The bike, the kick sled, the bus. We're going to talk more as we explore with one family. And coming up right after 7, we were just talking about the impact on small businesses of the Canada Post strike. Canada Postal workers have been on strike for almost 4 weeks now. We're going to get a glimpse of what's happening at the picket lines with someone who's been walking them. Stay tuned.
Today on The Current.
I said you have to close up your borders because they're coming in the northern border too a lot. Not like the southern border, but they're coming in the Canadian border a lot.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump says there are big problems along the border between our two countries. We'll check in with 3 communities on that border to find out what they're seeing when it comes to security and business. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Premier are meeting today again for more strategizing on how to respond to Donald Trump's tariff threats and how to keep the Canadian response united. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, it seems like these meetings could happen with some regularity. What will be the focus today?
Marcia, after they last met, premiers said they needed to see a plan from Justin Trudeau's government to tackle their border security concerns. So we'll see what they make of the billion-dollar package of additional equipment and personnel for police and border services agencies that we're now expecting to be included in next Monday's fall economic statement. It's clear, though, that this group of premiers is not content to sit back and trust Ottawa to carry the Canada-U.S. relations file and just brief them regularly on how it's going. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is in Las Vegas this week, meeting with governors from Western states in a push to keep the resource exports from her province tariff-free. And the current chair of the premiers, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, was on Fox News late yesterday, following up on his government's paid advertisements with the second of what seems to be a series of appearances on American television to plead Ontario's case. He told that audience that the premiers are going to be the ones that hold the Prime Minister accountable on border security. And he also said he'd like to lobby Donald Trump in person.
I'd be more than happy to fly down to Florida tomorrow if the president had a few minutes. I'd be down there in a heartbeat.
So the Prime Minister is keeping the premiers in the loop. How is it going keeping the opposition leaders on Team Canada?
Conservative supporters insist that Pierre Poilievre is not running down Canada when he attacks the Trudeau government's handling of this file, that his criticisms have been measured. But he sure didn't seem to be restraining himself much yesterday in the House when he described the Prime Minister's meeting with the opposition leaders last week this way.
Showed up for the meeting late, disheveled like he had just gotten out of bed, had no plan whatsoever to defend Canada against the unfair threats of the Americans against our economy.
No, Marcia, the photo released to that meeting doesn't really show the scene the way Poilievre described it. Look, undermining Trudeau at every turn is on brand for him. It's fodder for his constant campaigning at home. But if ultimately it contributes to Canada sitting in a weaker position against the U.S., that is something a future Conservative government will inherit.
All right. Thank you so much, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Another big interest rate cut could be coming for Canadians this morning. The Bank of Canada is expected to cut its key lending rate by 50 basis points. That would bring the rate down to 3.25%. But there are concerns in the labor market and with economic growth, which could pose potential risks no matter what the Bank of Canada decides. The CBC senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong reports.
As markets, consumers, and businesses try to guess what the Bank of Canada will do next, the best bet is to listen to what the bank said the last time it cut rates.
We need to stick the landing.
That's Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem, referring to the idea of a soft landing, in which inflation comes back to normal without the economy slipping into a recession. In October, when the central bank cut its key overnight lending rate by 0.5%, Macklem said that forecast was looking good.
If the economy evolves broadly in line with this forecast, we anticipate cutting our policy rate further.
Since then, GDP has weakened further. Real GDP grew by 0% in August and just 0.1% in September. Per capita GDP has declined for 6 straight quarters. The unemployment rate has reached 6.8%, and inflation has ticked up slightly. So Randall Bartlett, Senior Director of Canadian Economics at Desjardins, says he expects the bank will cut rates, but only by 25 basis points.
And so we think there's a lot of reason for the bank to continue cutting, but to be cautious in its approach to cutting going forward.
Looming over all this is the state of the Canadian dollar. If the bank goes ahead with another big 50 basis point cut, many think the dollar could fall below 70 cents for the first time in years. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Iran's supreme leader has addressed the public for the first time since Bashar al-Assad's regime fell in Syria. Iran was a staunch ally of the Assad regime.
نباید تردید کرد که اونچه
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says what happened in Syria was the result of U.S. and Israeli plans, and he says a neighboring country was also involved in the fall of Assad, a comment that apparently points a finger at Turkey. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is traveling there tomorrow to discuss developments in Syria. Santa Ana winds are whipping up wildfires in Malibu, California. Tens of thousands of people have been forced to leave their homes. Among the evacuees, Cher and Dick Van Dyke. Chief Anthony Maroney is with the LA County Fire Department.
The fire has burned approximately 2,862 acres and is 0% contained. The fire has grown an additional 600 acres this morning and this afternoon.
It's still not clear how the Franklin fire started, but the Malibu area has been under a red flag warning. That means the weather conditions are ripe for extreme fires. TikTok is challenging the federal government's order to shut down its operations in Canada. Documents filed in federal court in Vancouver claim the order will eliminate hundreds of jobs and could potentially terminate 250,000 contracts TikTok has with Canadian advertising clients. Ottawa ordered the dissolution of TikTok's Canadian business in November. It cited national security concerns. While the offices are closed, the app is still accessible. A grade 8 teacher accused of multiple sex crimes is appearing before an Ontario court today. Kellyanne Jennings is on unpaid leave from her job at a Catholic school in Port Hope, east of Toronto. As Thomas Daigle reports, she's recently been granted bail a second time.
Absolutely, the community would be upset.
Police allege 40-year-old Kellyanne Jennings sexually assaulted a student under 14, produced child pornography, and sent explicit material to a minor. What's more, the grade 8 teacher is accused of breaching her bail conditions twice in October. Port Hope, Ontario Police Inspector Katie Andrews.
One of the conditions when she was first released was not to be anywhere where children are expected to be, and she was.
She says Jennings' bail conditions now allow her to attend places where minors are likely to be, as long as her own children and her surety are there too. The local Catholic School Board's Director of Education, Stephen O'Sullivan, says Jennings is also banned from her workplace for now.
We immediately remove the teacher from all of our schools or from any interaction with students, staff, or entering any of our facilities.
While it's rare to hear of female teachers facing such allegations, it's hardly unheard of for women in general, says forensic psychologist Franca Cortoni.
About 2% of all known sexual offenders are women. Whether it's underreported, I have no doubt it is underreported.
Jennings is facing 20 charges, with 4 minors named as alleged victims. The accusations have not been proven in court. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
A pilot training school in New Brunswick is suspending some of its operations. The Moncton Flight College is closing an entire campus because of a lack of international students. 2 major Chinese clients have pulled out of the program. Shane Fowler tells us that some say it could be the result of Canada's cap on foreign students.
We're going to have to pause a considerable part of the operation.
That's Joe Gallenberty, spokesperson for the group of aviation companies that owns the Moncton Flight College. He says its Fredericton campus is temporarily closing, partly because of a lack of foreign students.
Specifically, Beijing University and Air China have been principal customers of ours for the calendar year 2025. They don't anticipate at present having any need to send students internationally for training.
Gallenberty points to several factors for the decline, including China's struggling economy and Canada's recent cap on foreign student permits. More than 90% of the 225 students at the Fredericton campus come from China. Gallenberty says he hopes it will reopen in 2026. So does St. Thomas University. It announced a new Bachelor of Arts Aviation stream degree as a partnership with the college earlier this fall. Spokesperson Jeffrey Carlton says they have a buffer. Students spend the first year in classrooms.
Our students that start in the fall will do their first year at St. Thomas. Then in the fall of 2026, they'll start their courses at the Moncton Flight College.
Gallenberty says the Moncton campus, which focuses on domestic students, remains unaffected. Shane Fallon, CBC News, Fredericton.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. It's cold out there. We've got an extreme cold warning for the western part of the province. Thanks so much for joining us here on CBC's Information Radio. Here on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. So this hour on the program, we're going to be hearing about this wild story. It's about a pretty big cat that traveled from Saskatchewan all the way to Duck Mountain and now lives at the Manitoba Museum. We're going to hear all about what this is about. So stay tuned at 7:40. That's coming up. Also at 10 to 8 this morning, are you sick of cars that just won't start in the cold? Are you out there scraping right now with your earbuds in? Maybe mumbling a few swears under your breath. Well, why are you driving? We're going to talk to a Winnipegger who says you should switch. How about a bike, a kick sled, a bus? Stay tuned. We're going to talk active transportation in the cold. We are also going to touch base with what's going on with the Canada Postal Workers strike. It's been almost 4 weeks now since they went out, and we're going to get a glimpse of what's happening on the picket line. So stay tuned for that conversation as well. Speaking of all things news, Heather Wells is in at 7:11. She's got your headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the first draft of Winnipeg's budget comes out today. It is the city's spending blueprint for 2025. The Manitoba Library Association is concerned there won't be any funding for Community Connections, the social services center at the downtown Winnipeg Millennium Library. A former star prosecutor who sent at least 7 innocent men to jail has died. George Dangerfield's former lawyer says he died, in fact, in Winnipeg last year. Dangerfield worked on several high-profile cases, but some of the people he put behind bars have been found innocent in the decades after he retired. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, Heather was just talking about it being budget day, and I know that there's been a lot of analysis, including yesterday on our show, about the big headline out of the budget, which is the fact that your property taxes are going to be going up by a significant margin, biggest margin in decades. However, we are wondering what else you're leaning into to hear about in the budget today that could affect your family or your business or your life here in the city of Winnipeg. And if you want to give us a call, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that this morning. 788-3205. 788-3205 is our listener line. All right, let's get into the actual forecast and look what the temperatures are going to be like for the rest of the day with Abby.
Across the province, the risk of frostbite is a concern. We have this extreme cold warning in effect for western Manitoba, affecting Brandon, Dauphin, and surrounding areas. We are looking at temperatures dropping to near minus 30 and even colder, and the wind chill is going to make it feel like minus 40, creating dangerous conditions, and this will be felt in most of the regions. Now, while this extreme chill may ease during the day, the forecast says it will return tonight, and it's going to be putting a lot of people at risk. As I mentioned, frostbite is something that you should take into consideration, especially with the wind chill factored in. If it's too cold for you, it's going to be too cold for the pets. That's what I would always tell you. Right now, Winnipeg, it is minus 25, mainly clear out there. The day is going to start sunny. We do have a mix of sun and clouds in the forecast developing near the noon period. It will feel brisk, and then we'll see highs of around minus 20. With a wind from the northwest, that will be shifting to light breezy conditions as the day progresses, and the wind chill is going to be in the range of minus 30 today. So you might want to take care out there. So right now, Winnipeg, we are just at minus 25.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey, what's up?
So far, actually pretty straightforward commute. Haven't heard of any major issues. But if you see something going on out there, if you're walking, biking, and driving, I can tell you those sidewalks and actually as well those bike lanes actually are looking pretty clear so far. So not a bad day to walk or bike to work besides the cold. But you can dress for that. Give me a call on the CBC commute line if you see anything else, though. 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Corey. Time right now is 7:14 a.m. Well, Canada Postal Workers have now been on strike for 26 days. Gifts, packages, and letters have all been stuck in warehouses. This is since late November. And just before 7 o'clock, we were hearing how concerned small businesses in particular across this country are because of the impacts of the postal delay, the strike, rather. Now, as we get closer to Christmas, we're now just 2 weeks out, people and businesses are all feeling that they would like a resolution. One of the people on the picket that's been visiting the picket line says that many of those on strike feel the same way. Reggie Tommen is Health and Safety Officer with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, Winnipeg local, and back in the day also was a postal worker, and he's in studio with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So you've been out on the picket lines. What has the mood been like from the workers, and what have you been hearing from people?
Well, we have several picket lines throughout Winnipeg and in the rural areas, and it's a roller coaster of emotions. We have experienced members out there who've been through these types of actions before, who they know what to expect, and to keep on the fight. And we also have new workers who haven't experienced this at all, who are worried and scared, and we're heading into week 5 of the strike action, and that's 5 weeks without pay, 5 weeks without benefits, and it's hitting some members.
How would you say negotiations are going right now?
It's really tough because from our perspective, it's both parties hold their cards pretty close to their chest, and a lot of us, and even myself as an executive, we're just glued to the phone or glued to the internet trying to find out any update, and just waiting for something to come out. So people are anxious to wait for that next movement. But like I said, both parties, they do hold their cards close, and it can be frustrating.
Canada Post says they've, quote, received the latest offers from the Canadian Union of Postal Workers and is extremely disappointed that their intent appears to widen the gap in negotiations rather than close it, end quote. What's your sense of that statement?
Well, it's that kind of sets me aback because, for one, I know Canadian Union of Postal Workers has lowered their wage demand. They've taken some demands off the table, which would, in Canada Post's words, would cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So I don't understand why they say we're widening the gap when we're actually trying to move closer to getting a fair deal.
Obviously, the federal government has said, they loathe to get involved. They've been involved in the past, but they've also really said, and the analysis has come across the country, that part of why people are talking about this being something that could be for the long haul is that beyond what you're talking about today, which is the issues around pay that the workers are striking for and other workplace issues, that this is the moment for the service where at some point the decision will have to be made. How does Canada Post go into the future in 2020? In 2025. How does it sustain itself in an era where postal service and the needs for that in this country have changed so much? Is there a point of view from workers on that? Is this seen by workers as, is that bigger issue something that is on the table for people, that sensibility that we're in this critical moment?
Well, there's no doubt that postal services have changed, and we got to continue to change. And I think some of the initiatives that CPW has tried to push forward in the past, and still today, is to expand our services. We got to create that value for the public because this is a public service. So I mean, you've heard it before. We've tried to raise postal banking as means of to ease the revenue. This postal banking is very successful in other countries, and it can be really successful here. The Canada, we serve every address in this country. So and our infrastructure is so huge. We need to take that all into account and expand those services because we're in every community, and people might not feel it in the urban sprawl because the convenience of everything, but we got to think of the communities that are outside the rural areas, the isolated communities that rely on our services. So we're still relevant. We're still very valuable to the public. And we need to continue to expand those services and create more value for Canada Post.
What did you enjoy most about the job while you were walking, I was going to say walking the beat, but I mean really out there delivering?
Well, I think I could speak for every postal worker. I think we love our job. We love being in the community. I loved being in my St. James area. That's where I delivered for probably 12 years. And I got to know my customers really well, and I became a familiar face in the community, and you feel appreciated and valued. And yeah, you become an advocate for everyone because you're on the street all the time. So it's people enjoy their job and love serving their communities.
What do you hope the public, understands right now about as this goes on? Because obviously people are very directly affected. So there's a lot of people that have, thoughts and opinions as they're watching this and trying to understand it.
From my experience on the picket line, I've had some great interactions with public, and a lot of public do support our struggle. I got to kind of rewind your question a little bit there. I'm sorry, I kind of lost.
I'm just wondering what you hope the public keeps in mind right now, because as you said, everyone's affected. So as this sort of goes on longer and longer, people are going to have a lot of emotions and a lot of opinions about the fact that you guys are still out.
As we go through this, I really empathize with the public, and I empathize with the small businesses that are affected. This is honestly, this is the first experience for me of being in a national all-out strike. I've been through lockouts and rotating strikes, so I didn't really know how long this was going to go. So it is going rather long, and then it was anticipated that it could be a long haul. But we have 55,000 plus members out on the line, and like I said earlier, we're going into week 5, and these members are without pay, they're without benefits. And my heart's with the community and the public, but it's also with the members. Being in my portfolio as health and safety officer, I do oversee a lot of health issues, stuff like that, and mental health is pretty critical at this stage. We're kind of coming over we're still probably climbing a mountain. We don't know when it's going to crest, and we're going to kind of see some true meaningful bargaining at the table from Canada Post. So yet to see that.
Just as a last question, I don't know if you have this number handy, and if you don't, that's okay, but I don't want to put you on the spot, but how many members do we have in Manitoba? There's 55,000 across the country, right?
We have around, for just in our local, so we're just primarily in southern Manitoba, and local 856, we look roughly between 1,500 and 1,600 members.
Yeah. Thank you very much for speaking, I guess, on behalf of them. I know you've been to various picket lines. Appreciate having you in live studio this morning.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's Reggie Tomlin, Health and Safety Officer with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers Winnipeg Local, which, as you just heard, has about 1,600 members. So we did ask Canada Post for an interview. They emailed a statement. It said in part, quote, "Our approach throughout negotiations has been fair, balanced, and straightforward, bringing much needed flexibility to our delivery model to improve service for Canadians and grow our parcel business while protecting and valuing the people who provide that service." Quote, this is a quote from a different part of the statement now. "In the last few weeks, Canada Post has made several important moves to close the gap and reach negotiated agreements, but the union has reverted to their previous positions or increased their demands," end quote. You can read more, of course, at cbc.ca nationally or on our local site at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
Time right now is 7:23 a.m. and we have sports coming up in a moment. We've got a couple minutes to give you some music, though, today. We have a new single out, actually. This is from a Yellowknife band. They're called Dig-a-Wolf. Their album's Trapline. It comes out in spring next year, 2025. Now, this one was inspired by a visit to a frozen trapline in a northern lake with friends. It's called Snowshoes on CBC. Works for this morning.
Your
That's what it's called. Snowshoes. Tune from a Yellowknife band called Dig-a-Wolf. I like it. It's cool, right? Let's get to Scott Reguera, who's standing by to talk about the Jets with a much-needed win last night and kind of a hairy outing between the teams. Is that a good way to put it, Scott? Good morning.
That's a very good way of putting it. Good morning, Marcy. Yeah. But Winnipeg, after averaging fewer than 3 goals a game this month, they really needed to explode, and they did. 8-1 beating the Bruins. The top line of Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, and Gabe Vilardi combined for half of those goals. And although he didn't admit it, Marcy, it must have been especially nice for Scheifele. Bruins general manager Don Sweeney is also the GM for Team Canada in the upcoming Four Nations face-off, and Scheifele was one of the notable snubs from that team. Now, if there was a black mark on the game, as you alluded to, it was during the third period. With his team down by 5, Boston forward Trent Frederick picked a fight with David Gustafsson. Gustafsson, who had no prior career tussles, fell to the ice after a single punch to the head. Captain Adam Lowry says the team did not like the mismatch in fighting opponents.
I don't blame them for, what happened. It's kind of the nature of a competitive sport, but it's unfortunate, the outcome. I think that's really, where we get upset is you don't want to see a teammate hurt. You don't want to see a teammate down on the ice and, with a head injury. So, I think that's where the emotion comes into it. We'll leave it at that.
Head coach Scott Arniel, Marcy, said post-game that Gustafsson needed stitches, but no word on whether he suffered a concussion or not. The Jets are back in action tomorrow. They'll be at home again to the Vegas Golden Knights.
And Canada's Athlete of the Year is Summer McIntosh. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, ahead of the Northern Star Award announcement yesterday, we discussed this on the show yesterday, it would have been a big surprise if Summer didn't win. The Toronto teen is, after all, the most successful athlete in a single Olympics for Canada ever. She had 3 golds and a silver in Paris. And so with due respect to the runners-up hockey players Connor McDavid and Natalie Spooner, hammer thrower Ethan Katzberg, and basketballer Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, this was McIntosh's award to lose. Not that she saw it that way when she was told she won by CBC.
I mean, I'm definitely in shock. That's pretty crazy and just makes this night even crazier. Anytime I get to represent Canada, I really do it with pride and try to do the best for my country. So to be recognized is absolutely incredible. And wow, just to be alongside those other names that have got it in the past is crazy. So, and I was just with Penny, who just got it a few years ago. So it's just kind of a full circle moment.
That's Summer speaking at the Short Course World Championships in Hungary, where she set a world record in the 400-meter freestyle. All of this serving as a perfect punctuation mark, Marcy, for the closest thing this country has to perfection in the pool.
Awesome. Let's finish with baseball. The Jays have, you have made a significant trade, right?
Yeah, and bringing in second baseman Andres Jimenez from Cleveland yesterday. Infielder Spencer Horwitz went the other way. Jays general manager Ross Atkins spoke about what Jimenez brings.
Really exciting player that's going to be a big impact for us. Excited about both sides of the ball for him. He is someone that we know can hit, and if he can get into more of the, driving the ball, there's upside there. The defense and base running are elite. That is absolutely proven. Excited about just that athleticism coming onto our field, and everything we know about the person and teammates been exceptional.
My one concern with this, getting rid of Horwitz, he was the second best batter for the Jays behind Vladdy Guerrero Jr. They got to bring in some power at the plate after this move. Toronto, they still have a long way to go.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott.
You bet.
Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in an icy Winnipeg. It is a cold start to Wednesday. A high today of -20 with a mix of sun and clouds. Now, we will have a risk of frostbite through the day. If you're in western Manitoba, an extreme cold warning is in effect with wind chill values above -40 this morning. Well, today is Budget Day at Winnipeg City Hall. The Manitoba Library Association is concerned the clock could be ticking down on Community Connections, the social services center at downtown Winnipeg's Millennium Library. Funding for that center is slated to run out December 31st. Kirsten Werman, who coordinates programs for the association, says staff at Community Connections are worried.
They're very concerned about what will happen to their patrons, to the folks that they serve here at Community Connections, and they also worry about the staff and the library space itself.
It's unclear if the city budget for next year has any funding for Community Connections. The first draft of that budget comes out this afternoon. The people who fought to search the landfill for the remains of women have now been honored. The King Charles III Coronation Medals were awarded last night to Manitobans for making a difference. Among recipients, relatives of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron, 2 victims of a serial killer.
Cambria Harris, a leading voice of the Search the Landfill movement, not only to find her mother, but for all those affected by MMIWG2S.
Jordan Myron, the sister of Mercedes Myron, also receiving a coronation medal. The coronation medal was created to mark the coronation of King Charles III on May 6th last year. The owners of some Manitoba restaurants say they have had their fill of crime. They're asking the province for help dealing with a spike in theft and vandalism. Sapoj Nejpal has operated India Palace on Ellis for more than 30 years. She says young people in the area have increasingly been targeting businesses with vandalism and mischief, and it's gotten to the point where some of her customers are concerned.
90% I know how to tackle those kids because being a mother too and so long in the business, I know how to handle them.
Sean Jeffrey, the head of the Provincial Restaurant Association, met yesterday with Justice Minister Matt Wiebe to talk about the issue. He tells CBC the Justice Minister was, quote, very open to addressing some of the challenges facing the industry. A Winnipeg nurse who killed his parents has been barred from practicing. Manitoba's College of Registered Nurses suspended the license of Trevor Farley until it finds he is no longer a danger to the public. Farley killed his parents and stabbed his former supervisor in 2021. A judge found he was not criminally responsible due to a mental health disorder. Farley said in a hearing he is not guilty of professional misconduct, but admitted his mental health illness may put people in danger. Farley was declared a high-risk accused. He can only be discharged from hospital with the approval of a Superior Court judge. A former star prosecutor who sent at least 7 innocent men to jail has died. George Dangerfield's former lawyer says he died in Winnipeg last year. Dangerfield worked in some high-profile cases, but some of the people he put behind bars have been found innocent in the decades after he retired. Lawyer James Lockyer advocated for all of them.
I'm afraid he didn't always play it fair, and it's essential in our business, given the stakes, that we always play fair. Mr. Dangerfield crossed boundaries too often that he shouldn't have crossed.
Lockyer says in most cases, Dangerfield and his team failed to disclose key evidence to the defense. Some mortgage holders are crossing their fingers this morning. Canada's central bank will announce its latest interest rate policy. The Bank of Canada is expected to cut its key rate by 0.5%. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. And scoring in the NHL. Nikita Chibrikov in the third period on TSN after just being called up from the Manitoba Moose of the AJHL. And the Jets actually socked it to Boston Bruins last night. A feisty match. 8-1 was the final for Winnipeg. Gloves were dropped a couple of times in the third period. But Coach Scott Arniel didn't want to focus on fights.
I'm not going to sit and talk about what happened in the last 10 minutes of hockey. That's detrimental for the game we played. We played a hell of a hockey game against a good hockey team, and that's more of what I'm more concerned about. We just, we had lost our last game here. That wasn't a real good outing by us, and like I said, a good team, a good veteran team. The way we come out and played, that's what I'm proud of. That's what I got out of that hockey game.
Winnipeg has one day off before they're back at it tomorrow night, hosting Las Vegas. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Hey, Heather, guess what happened during your news?
I have no idea.
They reissued the forecast, and it's colder.
Oh, great.
Abby's here with our details for what's coming for Winnipeg today. Now,
we're looking at red for most of the southern region now. Just looking everywhere is like it's going to be so more like, I call it red, but it's like blue all over the southern part of the province. Extreme cold warning now is extended to even Winnipeg and down to Morris and down to the border. We're going to see temperatures now feeling like minus 21, minus 41 with the wind chill. So it's going to be creating more like these dangerous conditions for most of those regions, including Winnipeg. Right now, minus 25. Today, we're going to see sunny conditions in Winnipeg. Then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds by the noon period. It will be chilly. We're going to see a high of minus 23. That changed while the newscast was on with some breezy conditions. The wind chills are going to be extreme this morning. Now we're looking at values in the range of minus 42 for Winnipeg. So frostbite still remains high. You need to dress accordingly. And then tonight, we're going to see temperatures drop to around minus 28. Similar conditions we're seeing in the south central region and the Red River Valley and Pembina Valley region. Now, the wind chill is going to be feeling in the range of minus 42 for folks out there. Heading west to Brandon, minus 29 at this time. You will also see sunny conditions today, though the cold high will be minus 24, and the wind chill is going to make it feel like minus 43 this morning. In the Parkland region, we're looking at temperatures around minus 31. A sunny day in the forecast. It's going to feel much colder with a wind chill around minus 44 this morning. For Gimli and the Interlake region, we're seeing temperatures around minus 27 at this time. The wind chill will feel like minus 42 for folks out there. Now for the Power and Flin Flon, we're seeing temperatures at minus 30. Sunny conditions in the forecast. Highs will get to minus 23, and then the wind chill will be around minus 38 this morning. For Thompson and Churchill, temperatures will hover between minus 33 and minus 22 for those regions, and wind chill is going to be in the range of minus 40s for those regions. So you across board, like I said earlier, it's more like dangerous wind chills across board.
Cold,
Put it on,
my
please.
friend.
Please put it on. Protect yourself.
Okay, this calls for a toque, which if you're watching YouTube, you can see I just put mine on. Abby, you've got yours on. Abby's got one of those with the fuzzy flip-up flaps and that. I have a pom-pom. I used to be anti-pom-pom, but I'm going for it this year because I got this cute toque from my friend. This is kind of opening up a conversation. This is purposeful. So I think we should go for toque pictures. Like, who is out there and wants to take a shot, and we could see your toque. Show us your favorite toque. Tell us about your favorite toque. You know, if you had it for years and you just can't let it go, or like, what's the deal with it? And why is it your fave? Is it about the warmth or the style? Like, you know, what's going on your head?
I used to have one that I loved so much, and my nephew was beginning to learn crafts, and he decided, I love the fluffy part of your...
Oh, the pom-pom.
And he cuts it.
He cut off your tooth pom-pom?
Yeah.
How old was he?
He was, I think, 4 then.
Oh, then you can't get mad because they're so cute and they don't mean it.
Okay.
Oh, I always had cheap toques. And then I invested in this Canada Goose merino wool toque. I'm like, I loved it. Looked stylish. And when I was scraping the car, like it was like, then I washed it in hot water and I dried it.
No.
Like, what am I, new? Right? The thing came out this big. And then I thought, this is the most stylish. I'm sorry, for radio listeners, I'm holding up my hand. It looks like the size of a grapefruit. And I thought, I donated it. I thought someone's going to have a really stylish baby now, because they're going to get my old toque. But Corey, you don't have a toque on, but we just kind of sprung this on you.
All my toque, I cycle through toques, like, because they all get kind of sweaty and gross because I run in them all the time.
Got it.
I don't really.
You don't have a fave.
I can't afford to get attached because they're just going to get sweaty and gnarly.
Okay, we want your toque pictures, listeners. We want to hear about those toques if you want to call us. Let's do everything toque. If they're going to keep having the temperatures plummet, we need to celebrate putting stuff on our heads. So 788-3205. And Corey's actually here to talk commuting.
Yeah, a couple things to keep an eye out for. Northbound Kenniston approaching Grant. There's a stalled car blocking the northbound curb lane on Kenniston. So keep left to get around that. As well, Grant and Shaftesbury, there's a multi-vehicle collision blocking, I guess, the northbound and eastbound curb lanes in that intersection there. So keep left to get around that. If you see anything else, have an update on if there's how backed up that is. If you see anything going out on the bike lane, sidewalks, highways, roads, give me a call, 204 844-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, let's turn our attention to animals, shall we? Not just any animals. Next on CBC's Information Radio, when we think of Manitoba wildlife, a cougar is not always actually the first animal that comes to mind. Elusive and sly in the woods that they roam, they usually go unseen. That's part of why we don't talk about them a lot. But thanks to a new Manitoba Museum exhibit, you can get an up-close look at a prairie cougar with a pretty wild story. So we are hoping this morning to connect to hear more about it because it's called The Cougar, Manitoba's Big Cat, and it explores the story of a specific cougar known as SK10. Which is what was labeled on his ear tag, SK10. So we're going to hopefully connect with the museum and find out more, the curator of the exhibit, and find out more about the cougar, Manitoba's big cat. But while we're having a challenge reaching our guest, we want you to, would suggest you might go to the Manitoba Museum's website and read more about the exhibit and how you can check it out. As mentioned, just to remind you of the line, if you need to call us, if you have problems in traffic, it's 788-3093. And Corey was mentioning not too bad out there, but I just want to add to our commute report that you may in fact want to be really careful around the equipment, which is out still trying to keep up with all the snow that we've had and clear some of those side streets and clear some of those areas that are, often wait for the clearing. So check that out. And also before you're heading out on the highways, it might be a little bit slippery. Things have settled down and we don't have any major reports from the highway. So that's good news. But just in case, you might want to call before you go out, which is 511, which is the highways line. Well, we have a bit of music from Avril Lavigne. The Greatest Hits Tour was supposed to wrap up in September, but the pop rocker has just extended it into the new year. So she's going to be heading to Moncton as well as Halifax. She's performing 3 shows in Ontario in 2025. And if you are thinking about traveling to a show, tickets for those new dates are going on sale this week on Friday. Here's a track she will be sure to perform. This is one of the originals, of course. This is probably the one that made her famous. Here's Avril Lavigne on CBC and Skater Boy.
He was a boy, she was a girl. Can I make it any more obvious? He was a punk, she did ballet. What more can I say? He wanted her, she'd never tell. Secretly she wanted him as well. But all of the friends stuck up their nose, and they had a problem with his baggy clothes. He was a skater boy, she said see you later boy. He wasn't good enough for her. She had a pretty face, but her head was up in space. She needed to come back down to earth. 5 years from now, she sits at home, feeding the baby, she's all alone. She turns on TV, guess who she sees? Skater boy rocking up MTV. She calls up her friends, they already know, and they've all got tickets to see his show. She tags along, stands in the crowd, looks up at the man that she turned down. He was a skater boy, she said see you later boy. He wasn't good enough for her. Now he's a superstar, slamming on his guitar. Does your pretty face see what he's worth? He was a skater boy, she said see you later boy. He wasn't good enough for her. Now he's a superstar, slamming on his guitar. Does your pretty face see what he's worth?
Avril Lavigne, Skater Boy. Man. Okay, guess how old that tune is? I'm going to give you a moment. If you're listening in your car, you play some bets. Anyone? Maybe I'll ask my next guest. Avril Lavigne's back on tour this year. So my next guest is curator of zoology, Randall Amui, who's here by Zoom listening to Avril Lavigne. Guess how old that tune is, Randall?
I have no idea.
22 years old already. From 2002. Right? I know.
Wow.
It's crazy. I know. Avril Lavigne, she's like middle-aged now. It's crazy. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good. I'm glad we finally managed to connect.
Yeah, I'm glad we connected
I
as
got
well.
my coffee. Have my coffee here. I'm ready to go.
Okay, good. Me too. We're connecting this morning, as I said to listeners before we played the tune there, over this new exhibit, the Cougar, Manitoba's Big Cat. And it's not just about cougars. It's about a specific cat that has a tag on the ear, had a tag on the ear, SK10. quite a story. So let's start at the beginning of that story. What sparked the journey to track this cat and even have him, tagged in the first place?
Yeah, the museum received this animal in 2020, but it was part of a study at the University of Alberta, and they did tag this animal as a cub. It was about little over a year old, and they put a satellite collar on the animal, and they managed to track this for quite a long time. And in just 3 months, it traveled about 750 kilometers. It was born in the Cypress Hills of Saskatchewan, wandered down into Montana, then I guess didn't like the political situation there, and came back up into Canada, ended up in the Moose Mountains in Saskatchewan, and then the satellite tracking device failed. But it was miraculously found again on some trail cameras in Riding Mountain National Park just a few years later. So from 2016 to 2018, it was tracked through the park on several trail cams, and we have those images in the exhibit so people can actually see the animal traveling as it was captured on those trail cams. And then a couple of years later, unfortunately, it was snared in a legal coyote trap or a coyote snare. And that's when we got the call from Manitoba Wildlife, received the animal, worked with the zoo to process it. So we have the skin of the animal mounted right beside its own skeleton. And so people can get an up-close look at this amazing animal that traveled well over 1,000 kilometers from where it was born to end up being in Manitoba.
What a comprehensive, interesting exhibit. I know that people are, if you're watching our show on YouTube this morning, you're seeing some of what's being described by Randall. I love that you have the video shots, too, of the animal moving. Tell me a little bit about why this is special. Because, cougars are, as I mentioned, they're elusive. They can be sly in the woods. But how unusual is it for a cougar to travel a distance like that?
It is quite unusual. This animal traveled the furthest of any that was studied in that particular research. Most of them, male cougars and females too, do need to leave the home range of their mothers because obviously the environment isn't going to be able to support all those animals. So they do have to leave and look for a new range for themselves. But it is a little bit unusual for them to move quite that far. Most of our cougars, though, do come from Saskatchewan and probably South Dakota. So our animals do travel quite a long ways to get here.
Is it strange for them to be found in Riding Mountain National Park?
No, it's most of the records that we have are from the western part of the province, usually around forested areas, places like Turtle Mountain, Riding Mountain National Park, Duck Mountain. And it's about this time of year that we do sometimes get specimens, unfortunately, through legal trapping. And then those animals do go to museums. There probably have been cougars in Manitoba for thousands of years, but we actually didn't have any physical evidence of them occurring here until 1973, just northwest or northeast of Winnipeg, near Stead. There was a cougar that was shot because it was attacking some people's dogs.
What do you hope people take away from the exhibit? Obviously, there's so much that you've learned from tracking this animal, and you have so much for people to look and understand. But what do you hope people take from it?
Well, I'd like people to figure out, to actually even know that cougars occur in Manitoba, because I think a lot of people are quite surprised to find out that they do occur here, and to understand the difficulties that some of these animals have in living in the environment that we've created. The prairies and much of Manitoba has been quite transformed by human activities. And the idea that an animal has to travel potentially, a thousand kilometers from where it was born to try to find a place to live is something that we should ponder and consider in our interaction with the environment.
Really appreciate you being with us. How long's the Cougar, Manitoba's Big Cat exhibit, going to be on at the museum?
Well, this is a permanent exhibit, so people can come down. We'd like them to come down even during winter break this year. Check out the exhibit. There's a lot of interactives. People can hear cougar sounds. They can learn a little bit more about the cougar, and they get a nice up-close look at the skeleton itself.
And it's warm.
Yeah, really, really looking forward to having people see it.
And it's warm.
And it's warm inside. That's right.
Selling feature this morning. Thank you so much, Randall. Appreciate you telling us all about it.
All right. Well, thanks for your interest.
Take care.
Yeah, hope everyone can come down.
Curator of Zoology Randall Mooey at the museum. So the Cougar, Manitoba's Big Cat, a new permanent exhibit. It's brand new and it's now available for viewing at the Manitoba Museum. It's 7:52. It's 8 minutes ahead of 8 o'clock now on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa on a cold Wednesday morning. As I've been mentioning, we've got that cold warning in effect. Feels like -40 on exposed skin. It's actually -25 in the city. And if you're getting up and getting in your cold car right now, you might be feeling it, or you might be outside the car with your earbuds in listening to the radio. Maybe you're scraping away. Well, what if you got rid of your car? What if you rode your bike, or you bused to work, or you used a kick sled? My next guest is here to talk about active commuting in the winter. Jaya Benj and her family have been doing this. Her family's been living without a car for about a decade. She's here to tell us how she manages her car-free life in our snowy Winnipeg weather, which is a question a lot of people ask. Good morning.
Good morning.
So why'd you get rid of the car in the first place?
I think it was a bit of exasperation about the older car that we had and all the repairs and the costs involved. So early on, it was a decision, not to buy a new car after the old one died. But, we learned about all of the great aspects of cycling. We do mostly cycling and getting the exercise, getting the fresh air.
And it's two of you and you have a 4-year-old, is that right?
We know it's better for the environment. Sorry?
Oops, sorry. The Zoom froze for a second there, and I didn't mean to talk over you. It's two of you, and Jaya, and you have a 4-year-old, is that right?
Yep. He would clarify that he's 4.5.
What does he think about all of these active transportation choices and, obviously in the bitter cold like today?
Well, partly he doesn't know any different, so it's just what he's used to. The last few days, I was pulling him home in the sled the other night, he said, "Oh, winter is just so much fun." So he's certainly like with the fresh snow that he can have a snowball fight and roll around and climb on the mountains on the side of the road. He's really enjoying that. I'm sure there will be days that are a little bit cold, and we'll make sure that he has lots of blankets in his sled to keep him warm, that he won't be happy with the cold.
How does I don't see a ton of kick sleds being used in the city, so just so people can understand if they're not familiar with them, how does that work for transportation?
Yeah, we're really lucky. We won one in a draw at a craft sale last spring. So it's kind of new to us as well, but it's a really fun way to travel as long as there's a bit of snow. So last night we were on it on the way home, and every intersection that is bare, it's not great for the kick sled, but the sidewalks are generally good, and especially after a fresh snow like this. He just enjoys, kind of feels like you're flying. He's sitting on the front of the sled, and I get a little bit more exercise, and we get there a little bit faster.
What's it meant for your life, given that you've been active commuting for so long? Do you have a sense, obviously beyond your well-being, what it's meant for your pocketbook?
I haven't really done the calculation. There's still costs involved. Like we use the car co-op whenever we need, and we're very lucky to have access to a number of vehicles. You know, if we need to move large objects or get somewhere that buses aren't really great to get to, or to go out of the city. So we do use vehicles on occasion, but it certainly is significantly less, and we just have so much more flexibility. Like with the car co-op, you know, we can rent a cube van or a pickup truck or whatever minivan, whatever type of vehicle we need in those moments.
What would you say is the biggest thing about planning for this? Is it deciding in advance what kind of transportation you need, or is it how to dress, or you know, what are the sort of things people might not think about?
Certainly every day, yeah, it's a weighing. We may walk, we may use our cargo bike, he may sit on the back of my bike, he may ride his bike. Now we have the kick sled. We have a couple different winter sleds depending on how clear the roads are, because if the roads are too clear, then it just tears up the sled. So we have a cheap sled for that. So looking at what the weather is that day, or basing on what the weather was the day before, looking out the window. Also, if I'm dropping him off and heading straight to work, then what meetings I might have that day. So actually right now we tend to use the bus a little bit more than we would normally, just because, yeah, the roads aren't very reliable for cycling and walking at the moment.
So make your pitch before you go to folks that might be listening and have been thinking about making the switch to ditch the car, and they don't feel maybe brave enough to do it.
Yeah, we have very few regrets. We're very lucky to live in a central neighborhood and to have access to Peg City cars as we need. But just getting more exercise, getting more fresh air. Leo, my son, just loving like being part of the snow. Seeing more people en route that you know, you can smile and say hi to. Just, I don't know, kind of endless benefits. There are moments when I'm rushing between a number of different locations where I say, oh, I can kind of see why people might want a car. But most of the time, I'm very happy with the choice that we've made.
Thanks for letting us into your life a little on this frigid morning, and giving us something to smile about, and maybe it'll make some people brave if they're on the cusp of making the choice. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. That is Jaya Benj with us live on Zoom this morning. She's an active commuter, as you heard, who navigates Winnipeg year-round without a car. If you're one too, maybe we can come along. I know there's folks that skate year-round. We'd love to get out skating with you if you're a skating commuter. Pitch us on the listener line, 788-3205. Heather's here with headlines.
The first draft of Winnipeg's budget comes out today. It is the city's spending blueprint for 2025. The Manitoba Library Association is concerned there won't be any funding for Community Connections, the social services centre at downtown Winnipeg's Millennium Library. And people who fought to search the landfill for the remains of victims of a serial killer have now been honoured. Cambria Harris and Jordan Myron were awarded for their fight to find the remains of their family members, Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron, at a landfill. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
Still ahead, we're starting a series. The fertility rate in this country as low as it's ever been. Why?
Today on Q with Tom Power. The legendary poet Nikki Giovanni has died at the age of 81. Earlier this year, Nikki sat down for a wide-ranging conversation about her life, about poetry, and why she thinks more artists need to go to Mars. You'll hear that conversation.
I think we need to get more artists into space because there are things to see.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump says there are big problems along the border between our two countries. We'll check in with 3 communities on that border to find out what they're seeing when it comes to security and business. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report.
Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Another big interest rate cut could be coming for Canadians. Later this hour, the Bank of Canada is expected to cut its key lending rate by 50 basis points. That would bring the rate down to 3.25%. But there are concerns in the labor market and with economic growth, which could pose potential risks no matter what the Bank of Canada decides. The CBC senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong reports.
As markets, consumers, and businesses try to guess what the Bank of Canada will do next, the best bet is to listen to what the bank said the last time it cut rates.
We need to stick the landing.
That's Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem, referring to the idea of a soft landing, in which inflation comes back to normal without the economy slipping into a recession. In October, when the central bank cut its key overnight lending rate by 0.5%, Macklem said that forecast was looking good.
If the economy evolves broadly in line with this forecast, we anticipate cutting our policy rate further.
Since then, GDP has weakened further. Real GDP grew by 0% in August and just 0.1% in September. Per capita GDP has declined for 6 straight quarters. The unemployment rate has reached 6.8%, and inflation has ticked up slightly. So Randall Bartlett, Senior Director of Canadian Economics at Desjardins, says he expects the bank will cut rates, but only by 25 basis points.
And so we think there's a lot of reason for the bank to continue cutting, but to be cautious in its approach to cutting going forward.
Looming over all this is the state of the Canadian dollar. If the bank goes ahead with another big 50 basis point cut, many think the dollar could fall below 70 cents for the first time in years. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the premiers are meeting again today for more strategizing on how to respond to Donald Trump's tariff threat and how to keep the Canadian response united. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. And Janice, it seems like these meetings could happen with some regularity. What will be the focus today?
Marcia, after they last met, premiers said they needed to see a plan from Justin Trudeau's government to tackle their border security concerns. So we'll see what they make of the billion-dollar package of additional equipment and personnel for police and border services agencies that we're now expecting to be included in next Monday's fall economic statement. It's clear, though, that this group of premiers is not content to sit back and trust Ottawa to carry the Canada-U.S. relations file and just brief them regularly on how it's going. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is in Las Vegas this week, meeting with governors from Western states in a push to keep the resource exports from her province tariff-free. And the current chair of the premiers, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, was on Fox News late yesterday, following up on his government's paid advertisements with the second of what seems to be a series of appearances on American television to plead Ontario's case. He told that audience that the premiers are going to be the ones that hold the Prime Minister accountable on border security. And he also said he'd like to lobby Donald Trump in person.
I'd be more than happy to fly down to Florida tomorrow. If the president had a few minutes, I'd be down there in a heartbeat.
So the Prime Minister is keeping the premiers in the loop. How is it going keeping the opposition leaders on Team Canada?
Conservative supporters insist that Pierre Poilievre is not running down Canada when he attacks the Trudeau government's handling of this file, that his criticisms have been measured. But he sure didn't seem to be restraining himself much yesterday in the House when he described the Prime Minister's meeting with the opposition leaders last week this way.
Showed up for the meeting late, disheveled like he had just gotten out of bed, had no plan whatsoever to defend Canada against the unfair threats of the Americans against our economy.
No, Marcia, the photo released to that meeting doesn't really show the scene the way Poilievre described it. Look, undermining Trudeau at every turn is on brand for him. It's fodder for his constant campaigning at home. But if ultimately it contributes to Canada sitting in a weaker position against the U.S., that is something a future Conservative government will inherit.
All right. Thank you so much, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. In Syria, everyone there knows the uncertainty. A new caretaker prime minister has been appointed by rebel forces, and the Assad regime has fallen, and Syrians have been looking towards a new future. The CBC's senior international correspondent, Margaret Evans, joins me now from Damascus. And Margaret, what is the new prime minister saying?
Well, he's started out by pledging inclusivity. He's saying now is a time for stability, it is a time for calm. And actually, one of the first things he's done is had a meeting, not only with members of what they're calling the Transitional Council, but with former cabinet ministers from the al-Assad regime. So they're trying to present an image of a calm transfer of power, if you like, to be and present a reassuring image to the outside world. One of the other things he has done is called on Syrian refugees living abroad to come home. That's more than 6 million people. The vast majority of them, of course, are in regional countries like Turkey and Jordan and Egypt. But he's saying it's now time for Syrians to come home and rebuild. So trying to deliver the right messages to the outside world and to Syrians who might be nervous about what comes next.
There is still fighting happening in Syria. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. Some of the Syrian opposition groups who are backed by Turkey up in the northeast of the country have been fighting the Syrian Kurds, who are also in the northeast of the country. They are backed by the United States, the fighting force that helped defeat the Islamic State. Turkey says that those Kurdish groups has within its ranks some people supporting Kurdish separatists in Turkey, and there's been a lot of fighting up north, and that's worrying people quite a bit.
And what is life like right now in Damascus?
You know, it's interesting because it's really coming back to life. Actually, this morning I was in the famous covered market, the old souk. Shops were opening again. Shopkeepers were saying that they felt confident enough to open. They're willing to give this process a chance because they're so happy to see the back of Bashar al-Assad, a truly barbaric regime that, you know, has been in charge here for more than 20 years.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thanks for having me.
The CBC's Margaret Evans in Damascus. TikTok is challenging the federal government's order to shut down its operations in Canada. Documents filed in federal court in Vancouver claim the order will eliminate hundreds of jobs and could potentially terminate 250,000 contracts TikTok has with Canadian advertising clients. Ottawa ordered the dissolution of TikTok's Canadian business in November. It cited national security concerns. While the offices are closed, the app is still accessible. A class action lawsuit over contaminated water has been filed against Transport Canada. Residents in Newfoundland and Labrador in the town there say their drinking water contains forever chemicals. They say those chemicals seeped into their wells from the nearby St. John's Airport. The CBC's Heather Gillis has the details.
For Eddie Shear and his family, simply turning on the taps in their home is a little terrifying these days. His well water in Torbay, Newfoundland and Labrador has tested positive for toxic forever chemicals, per and polyfluoroalkylated substances, 3 times the recommended safe level.
They can lead to like thyroid issues, immunodeficiency issues, prostate cancer, kidney cancer, liver cancer.
The chemicals seeped into the groundwater, migrated into wells from foam used in firefighting training between 1980 and 2004 at the St. John's International Airport. In January, Transport Canada tested more than 50 wells. In May, it started providing bottled water to those affected, but it's not a long-term fix. So Shear started a class action lawsuit, saying the federal government failed to properly clean up the land, decreasing the value of homes nearby, causing a lot of stress, and well contamination for dozens of homes.
We need to be hooked up to a water supply, a clean water supply.
Hard to do, says Alex Templeton, the lawyer leading the lawsuit. Municipal water hookup isn't viable. Nearby ponds are contaminated too. Templeton says any solution will cost a lot of money and time.
So class actions are measured in years, not months or weeks.
Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Transport Canada says they're aware of the lawsuit, but won't comment while it's before the courts. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, welcome to a frigid Wednesday morning. In fact, during the show, they updated the forecast and made it colder in Winnipeg than what we started with when we got on the air at 5 this morning. Thanks for joining us. I guess I should say when we got in the air at 6 this morning. We've been here since 5, and it's minus 25. Abby's going to update our forecast and tell you what the rest of the day is going to bring in a moment. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC. It's your morning show on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Well, this half hour, we're beginning a series that we're going to be exploring. And it is prompted by the fact that the fertility rate in this country, in Canada, has been in a downward spiral since 2008, hitting a historic low for the past 2 years. We're going to start the series looking at why fewer people are having children or having fewer children with a statistics expert about what those numbers say. And also, if you look at our birth rate in Manitoba, how concerned we should be about population. So stay tuned as we begin that series of conversations. Right now at 8:11 a.m., let's go to Heather Wells, who has updates on the news this morning with her headlines.
Good morning. Well, just when you thought maybe this cold isn't so bad, Environment Canada now has expanded the extreme cold warning to cover Winnipeg, the Red River and Pembina Valleys, parts of the Interlake. Wind chill values of minus 42 this morning, meaning frostbite is likely in minutes. The first draft of Winnipeg's budget comes out today. It is the city's spending blueprint for 2025. The Manitoba Library Association is one group concerned there won't be any funding for community connections. That is the Social Services Centre at downtown Winnipeg's Millennium Library. We'll hear more about that and other local news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Nice lead.
No, it's not.
I know. Listen, I just came from somewhere warm, and the holidays in warm climates, like, it's fun because it's like different, but it's not, I don't know. I'm a Manitoban. It doesn't feel right. So
when you land and you see all the snow, you think, this is Christmas.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the shoveler in my house, so I probably should admit that because I think we landed and had maybe slightly different thoughts, but it did look really, really pretty. But man, it's just been snowing and snowing. They're keeping up not too badly with the clearing on the main routes. Corey's going to cover our commute in a minute here. But first, let's elaborate on what Heather said here, Abby. The change in the forecast, it's going to be even colder than we thought.
Yeah, that change in forecast. And, you know, when you're within that wind chill value of minus 40 to minus 47, it's between 10 and 5 minutes that you'll be getting that frostbite impact you. So you want to prepare accordingly for today. Everywhere, frostbite is a concern now. Extreme cold warning affecting most of the regions in the southern part of the province. We're seeing wind chill values reaching minus 40 and even colder due to this polar vortex that is sweeping through the region, dropping temperatures, and that's combined to that northerly winds, which is creating these dangerously cold conditions, I will say. At the Fox, it's minus 26 now. For Winnipeg today, we're looking at sunny skies turning to a mix of sun and cloud by the noon period. It will feel quite chilly. We're going to see a high of minus 20 with winds from the northwest this morning. That will be easing by the afternoon period, and then the wind chill is around minus 41, minus 42 for the southern part of the province. Though for tonight, we dropped to around minus 28. That wind chill is still going to stay with us. We're going to be in the range of minus 30s, frigid overnight to minus 37. So that frostbite is going to stay with us all day. If you're doing anything outdoor, please prepare accordingly, because much of the province will be experiencing these conditions today.
No doubt. All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey, you'll like this. On the plane on the way back, there were people and like very fit looking people. Mm-hmm. And then I leaned in to look, and some of them were wearing shirts that said Iron Man. So people were down in California. That's where I was doing.
That's fun.
Yeah, doing an Iron Man. So now for something like that, you would want the warmer weather.
Yes, very much. I feel like cold Iron Man, not nearly as fun.
You can't
Especially
do
the swimming. The swimming part. I was just thinking, not super fun.
Be an entirely different thing. Yeah. They tried it once and then no, cut that off.
Yeah. No.
Didn't last.
No.
Wonder why. All right. The commute this morning?
Yeah. So one of the biggest issue out there right now is northbound Kenniston, just approaching Grant. There's a stall blocking the curb lane. You want to keep left to get around that. I actually got a call from Kirsty on that. She said it's backed up all the way to Sterling Lyon. So very slow going there. There was an issue in Grant and Shaftesbury that that multi-vehicle collision there has been cleared. Other than that, no major issues out there on the highways either. Looks pretty clear. But just a fun fact, if you're driving down Portage and Main, you'll notice those barricades coming down, which is pretty exciting.
And Corey and I have a total thought on how the city should have monetized that.
Yeah, well, we're thinking because budget's coming up, revenue's low.
Today,
got to sell those little bits of barricade.
Right?
Yeah.
They could have totally sold those off, piece of Portage and Main.
Yeah.
Maybe they're doing that and we're like trumping some
yeah,
big
exactly.
announcement.
Well, there's going to be some announcement today. Like, darn it.
Yeah, we'll try to get the royalties.
Yeah, exactly. But if you see something going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, we're starting a new series this morning, and for the next little while, we're going to be taking a look at the declining fertility rates in Manitoba and also talking to people who've made the choice not to have kids. First, though, let's look at the numbers, across the country. Statistics Canada says the fertility rate in our country is the lowest it's ever been. So Canada's fertility rate has been at 1.26 children born per woman now for 2 years in a row. Manitoba's numbers are sitting just above the average at 1.52, but it's way below what's called the replacement rate. Now, let's talk about the numbers to start our series. So Nora Galbraith is senior analyst from the Centre for Demography at Statistics Canada, and she's here to break it all down. Hi, Nora.
Good morning, Marcy. Nice to be here in Ottawa, where it's we just have some freezing rain.
Oh, yeah.
Not minus 40.
Come visit sometime. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's just cold. Tell us more about the numbers. Like, what do they say to you overall before we dig in here?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Canada's fertility rate reached a new record low last year of 1.26 children per woman. That wasn't a big surprise, as it has been generally decreasing for a number of decades now. And we also see, on an international level, that's happening in most countries. Most high-income countries are seeing the same trend. But that said, there were a few things that happened in the last year of data that were particularly special. One of those is the rate or the magnitude of decrease that we're seeing. So the level of year-over-year decreases that we've seen in the last couple of years, we really haven't seen in about 50 years in Canada. The last time we had this sort of rapid pace of decrease was back in the so-called baby bust years, the late 1960s, early 70s, following the baby boom. And the reason that we're having this more rapid year-over-year decreases is because we're seeing fertility decrease kind of uniformly across all age groups of women. Again, that's something that's quite rare historically. Again, last time we saw it was during the baby bust period. So for some time now, there's been a trend of lower fertility rates for younger women and increasing fertility rates for women in their 30s and early 40s. But in 2023, there was a uniform across the board decrease.
I want to interject and just ask you about Manitoba because, as I mentioned, our fertility rate here is a bit higher than the national average. As we dig into discussing concerns, is it high enough for us not to be concerned, or are we sort of lumped into sort of what we're about to analyze? Because 1.26 children's the average, we're just at 1.52.
Right. So Manitoba has been pretty consistently higher than the national average for some time now. It was actually second highest among the provinces just after Saskatchewan in 2023. And the reason that Manitoba's fertility rate tends to be higher than the national average is because they have stronger fertility rates among younger women. So women in their 20s, early 30s, Manitoba has relatively high fertility rates compared to other parts of the country. And also, when we look at teenage fertility rates, Manitoba had the third highest teenage fertility rate in the country in 2023 after Nunavut and Saskatchewan. So.
In the introduction, we mentioned that the numbers we're talking about are below the replacement rate, especially that national number. Can we explain to listeners what the replacement rate is?
Yeah, so this is sort of a theoretical threshold that demographers have come up with of 2.1 children per woman. So when fertility rates are at that level or higher, you can theoretically replace the population over a number of generations, because basically the two members of the mother and father replace themselves, plus a little extra to account for migration and mortality. So
that's what
Canada
the number
has
is.
been, yeah. Canada's been below that for about 5 decades now.
Can you elaborate a bit on you've sort of answered this in part as you were going through the stats, but about why the fertility rate is on a decline, what the thought is around why overall?
Yeah, so there's, I think, no one single factor that we can say is contributing to that. Generally, we know that with greater rates of post-secondary education, women having stronger labor force participation rates in recent decades, that tends to lead to people having their children at increasingly older ages. So we've seen that the average age of childbearing in Canada has been steadily increasing over time. And when you start giving birth at a later age, let's say in your mid-30s, it just becomes more difficult to have a really large family size, just simply due to the biological limits of childbearing. So that's one factor. But I think there's an endless list of reasons why or why not people want to have children or decide to have children. I think it's, as we reach these new sort of unprecedented low levels of fertility, it's definitely worth our interest in trying to dig into that and understand what are the main factors today that are driving that.
Yeah, we had a major brainstorm at the beginning of the thoughts of this series, just in our story meeting, and all these things started, why would you have one child versus, 2 children, and what about costs, and what about this, and like all kinds of things started coming to the forefront. So we have a lot of conversations to come. Given this, Canada, is also at the same time reducing the number of immigrants being allowed to settle here in this country. What could happen if we don't address this one way or the other?
Yeah, so when fertility rates are below that replacement level, in the absence of large influxes of international migrants to the country, eventually the population will begin to decrease. Now, as I said, Canada's been below that threshold for 5 decades, and we've been experiencing strong population growth because of international migration. It's the major contributor to our population's growth right now. So I think as levels currently are, we're in no danger of that. In contrast, in other G7 countries, such as Italy, that don't rely as much on international migration, they are beginning to grapple with the consequences of rapid population aging, population decrease, and everything that goes along with that, which can include, challenges in their labor market, a lot of stress and pressure on their public health care and pension systems, and so on.
Nora, thank you for starting our series by looking at these numbers. We really appreciate your time and analysis.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's Nora Galbraith. She's a senior analyst from the Centre for Demography at Statistics Canada. So on Friday this week, in the next part of our series, we're going to talk to 2 women who have decided to be child-free. And if you have a pitch for us, maybe you're listening saying, I've got a story to share about how we made our family decision or what happened in our case, or maybe you're thinking about it right now and you're interested. 788-3205 is our listener line, or if you'd rather email us, I always want to offer that as well. You can email radio893@cbc.ca.
A brand new car painted in a soothing shade of gray. The interior of an entire house in classic beige. Cheese aged from a bunch of black and white cows.
I'll buy that, and apparently, so will you. Brilliantly Bland, Why Boring Sells, on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
8:25, freezing warning, -25 in Winnipeg, -30 in Brandon, -32 in Thompson, and it's going to feel like -40 most places. You can see the cold today. So Kevin just put up a shot of downtown, and it's that kind of day where, everything just sort of is at a standstill. Everything's creaking. Hopefully not cracking, just creaking. But today's actual daytime high is going to be minus 23 in the city of Winnipeg. So don't have exposed skin. It's going to freeze in minutes. When we're at these kind of temperatures, we're talking 2 minutes when it's extreme cold and 10 to 30 minutes in moderate cold when the wind chills are minus 28 to minus 39. So it's cold out there this morning. Just take care. 788-3093, by the way, is the traffic line. That's if you're having any challenges on the commute. Well, who doesn't love a good remix? I know I do. Shelley Hamilton is giving one of her old songs some island life. She's re-released her tune Carry On. It first came out in 2018, but she recently linked up with a group called Reg Addiction to give it a new spin. And here it is.
I'm sleeping with you, but I'm thinking on him. And there's nothing I can do with the state that I'm in. I'm sitting here wondering how it all went wrong. How did she wind up in the place where I belong? Well, carry on, carry on, carry on. Carry on, carry on. I'm sitting here wondering where it is you went. What are you doing with all those hours spent? Do I ever cross your mind? Are you too busy to see? Is she making you happy like you and I should be? Well, carry on, carry on, carry on. Carry on, carry on. Carry on, carry on, carry on. Carry on, carry on. Ooh, I get so damn excited when you're chasing me in my dreams. The future is so uncertain, I don't know what this could mean. I carry this weight inside, and I wait for you to come to me. A signal, a star, a light, a sign that says it's meant to be. Well, carry on, carry on. Carry on. Carry on. Carry on.
Shelley Hamilton featuring Reg Addiction and Carry On. It is coming up to news time at 8:30, and I just want to thank specifically those associate producers who worked on the interviews today. They are Chidi Akuma, Kalkadan Mulageta, May McKillop, and Carmen Ponto. So thank you very much to everyone for your work today and each and every day. Appreciate you. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our live team here at the show, and it's cold in Winnipeg. Just want to remind you, if you want to reach the show at any point, you can always reach out by email or by calling us. If you want to call us also on the traffic line, 788-3093 is the number to have at hand. And sometimes early in the morning, we don't get a lot of calls between 6 and 7 o'clock, and then sometimes people call later and say they didn't think of it. So have the number on hand. We're on air every morning at 3 minutes to 6 a.m. until 8:37 a.m., and that's when the current takes over. So the current, speaking of which, today on the program, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump says there are big problems along the border between our two countries. So today, Matt Galloway is going to check in with people in some key border towns about the reality of life on the border and also their concerns and worries for the future of their communities and how they're feeling about the everything being about to change with the new president-elect as he's stated some intentions that could change the relationship. So that's coming up. Should be an interesting conversation, and it's coming up on The Current right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's minus 26, but when you factor in that wind, it feels more like minus 43 out at the airport. That is the wind chill value, meaning frostbite likely in minutes this morning. We're in for a sunny day with a high of minus 23, and brace yourself for brisk. That extreme cold warning for western Manitoba has now been expanded to include Winnipeg, the Red River and Pembina Valleys, and parts of the Interlake. The blast of Arctic air is pushing wind chill values to about minus 42, as I mentioned this morning, with frostbite likely in minutes. Dangerous cold this morning. The first draft of Winnipeg's budget comes out today. It is the city's spending blueprint for 2025. The Manitoba Library Association is concerned there won't be any funding for community connections. That's the social services center at downtown Winnipeg's Millennium Library. Kirsten Werman coordinates the Library Association's programs.
This innovative, effective space is also one of the busiest spaces in Millennium. This space does the work it's supposed to do.
Funding for Community Connections expires December 31st. It is unclear if the 2025 city budget will allow the center to continue. That budget will be released this afternoon. Being honored for the fight to bring their loved ones home.
Jordan Myron, a leading voice of the Search the Landfill movement, not only for her sister, but for all those affected by MMIWG2S.
Last night, Jordan Myron, the sister of Mercedes Myron, and Cambria Harris, the daughter of Morgan Harris, each received the King Charles III Coronation Medal. It was a ceremony at the Manitoba Legislature to recognize people who have contributed to their community and the country. Myron and Harris have been vocal advocates to search Prairie Green landfill, and last week the province began the process of searching that landfill. The owners of some Manitoba restaurants say they have had their fill of crime. They're asking the province for help dealing with a spike in theft and vandalism. Sapoj Najpal has operated India Palace on Ellis for more than 30 years. She says young people in the area have increasingly been targeting businesses with vandalism and mischief, and it's gotten to the point where some of her customers are scared.
90% I know how to tackle those kids because being a mother too and so long in the business, I know how to handle them.
Sean Jeffrey, the head of the Provincial Restaurant Association, met yesterday with Justice Minister Matt Wiebe to discuss the issue. He tells CBC the Justice Minister was, quote, very open to addressing some of the challenges facing the restaurant industry. A Winnipeg nurse who killed his parents has been barred from practicing. Manitoba's College of Registered Nurses suspended the license of Trevor Farley until it finds he no longer is a danger to the public. Farley killed his parents and stabbed his former supervisor in 2021. A judge found he was not criminally responsible due to a mental health disorder. In a hearing, Farley said he isn't guilty of professional misconduct, but admitted his mental illness may put people in danger. Farley was declared a high-risk accused. He can only be discharged from hospital with approval of a Superior Court judge. A Crown prosecutor who had his record tarnished by multiple wrongful convictions has died. George Dangerfield's former lawyer, Jay Prober, says Dangerfield died in Winnipeg last year. Dangerfield helped put 7 innocent men in jail in a career that spanned decades. Prober says Dangerfield doesn't deserve taking all the blame.
He happened to be a very good lawyer. And to lay these wrongful convictions at his doorstep, each one of them is unfair based on what I know and knew at the time.
Many of the cases involved the prosecution failing to disclose key evidence. Prober says Dangerfield only worked with the information he received from police. Well, later this hour, the Bank of Canada makes its final interest rate setting of the year. And considering economic conditions, it is widely expected the central bank will make a 50 basis point cut. That would drop the bank's key lending rate down to 3.25%, a setting we haven't seen in more than 2 years. Most analysts agree inflation is generally moving in the right direction. So the central bank's primary concern now is the sluggish economy. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Last look at what's going on in the morning commute. Corey's just sitting down in case there's anything urgent to tell us about before we get off the air, Corey.
Yeah, and you know what? Just northbound Keniston approaching Grant. There's a stall blocking that northbound curb lane. Heard that it's actually backed up all the way to Sterling Line. So just heads up there.
That's my term for long lineups in traffic. It's very technical. Meh. All right. Abby Adeyemi with the last look at today.
From the northern part of the province down south, frostbite will be the concern this morning. Extreme cold warning in effect for most of the southern parts, from Westman all the way down to Winnipeg, Red River, Pembina Valley region, and parts of the Interlake. We're going to see temperatures getting close to minus 42 and even 43.
All right.
It's dangerously cold outside.
Good day to stay in if you can. Take care, be well, Manitoba. Thanks so much for staying with us this morning and being a part of the morning show. Always love having you along. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. We hope you tune in. Thanks to our live team out in our news center. That is Megan Ketchison and Heather Wells and Joni Nicolo. Here in our studio, our crew is Corey Funk and Abby Adeyemi and Mr. Kevin Nipatebo waving goodbye on YouTube. Farewell, goodbye. Talk to you again tomorrow. I'm Marcy Marcusa. The Current's coming up next on CBC. Take it easy.